In the quiet hours when the world slows down, many of us feel the weight that we spend our days trying to ignore. We go to work, we smile at friends, we scroll through endless screens, all while something heavy sits inside. It may be stress that feels like a tightening rope around the chest, or loneliness that echoes in the heart, even in a crowded room. It may be the endless worry about money, or the quiet ache of relationships that do not bring the comfort we hoped for. Whatever the form, this pain does not disappear simply because we keep ourselves busy. Instead, it waits, pressing gently until it cannot be ignored that the truth is, modern life offers us countless ways to distract ourselves, but very few ways to heal. We are told to chase more success, more possessions, more attention. Yet even when we achieve those things, the restlessness returns. It feels as though there is a missing piece, something deeper that cannot be satisfied by achievement or entertainment. This endless cycle leaves us tired, yet unsure where to turn. What if the answer is not outside, but inside? For thousands of years, the teachings of the Buddha have spoken directly to this restless heart. They do not promise that life will suddenly become easy, or that pain will vanish like smoke. Instead, they offer something more real, something more lasting. A path to meet life as it is, to see through the illusions that bind us, and to discover freedom in the very place we once felt trapped. These teachings are not distant or abstract. They are practical, human, and alive. They speak to the same struggles we face today: stress, fear, anger, grief, and they shine a light on how to move through them with clarity and compassion. Imagine for a moment that suffering is like being caught in a storm. The winds howl, the rain lashes down, and we feel small and powerless. Our instinct is to run, to escape, to cover our ears, and hope it passes quickly. But Buddhism offers another way. It invites us to pause in the middle of the storm, to breathe, to notice, and to realize that while we cannot control the weather, we can learn to stand in it without being swept away. We can learn to hold ourselves steady, to find a calm center even as the storm rages. That calm is not indifference, but strength. It is not avoidance, but wisdom. This journey is not about rejecting the modern world or denying our emotions. It is about bringing awareness into every corner of our lives, into the office meeting that leaves us anxious, into the argument that breaks our heart, into the long nights when we feel we cannot go on. It is about meeting each moment with honesty, seeing clearly what is happening, and discovering that within us lies the power to let go, to forgive, and to begin again. What you will hear in the hours ahead is not a sermon, not a lecture, but a story woven from the pain and hope of real human lives. Each chapter will touch on a struggle that so many of us know too well: stress, money, relationships, anxiety, loneliness, anger, uncertainty. And each chapter will offer a door, drawn from the wisdom of the Buddha, that opens toward relief. These doors are not locked. They do not require belief or rituals. They require only your willingness to listen, to breathe, and to experiment with a new way of meeting life. Tonight, as you listen, something subtle may begin to shift. A phrase might stay with you. A simple story might open your heart. A quiet breath might remind you that you are not as trapped as you once believed. This is the promise of the path ahead. Not escape, but freedom. Not denial, but peace. And so, let us begin. There is a moment that arrives for almost everyone in modern life. A moment when the weight of stress feels heavier than we ever imagined it could. It comes not only from one single source, but from the constant layering of demands. There are bills that must be paid, deadlines that never seem to end, relationships that require our energy, and a world that always demands more. Stress becomes not just an occasional visitor, but a permanent resident in our minds and bodies. We wake up already thinking of what could go wrong. We lie down at night with a racing heart. Our shoulders tense, our breath shortens, And even when nothing dramatic is happening, our inner world feels like a battlefield dot in America. Stress is often described as the silent epidemic. Doctors link it to heart disease, high blood pressure, digestive problems, and insomnia. Counselors link it to broken marriages, strained friendships, and addiction. Employers see it in the form of burnout and lost productivity. And yet, most people believe stress is simply the price we must pay for living in a competitive, fast-moving society. We treat it like weather, something inevitable, something we cannot change. But if we look closer, we begin to see that stress is not just the product of the outside world. It is also the product of how our minds meet that world. Think of stress like a fire. The events of life, the unpaid bill, the boss's email, the teenager slamming the door are like sparks. But whether those sparks ignite into a roaring blaze depends on the fuel we provide. Our thoughts, our fears, our insistence that things must go exactly the way we want, these are the logs in gasoline. Without them, sparks flicker and die. With them, the smallest problem becomes an inferno. This is why two people can face the same situation, and one collapses while the other stays steady. The difference is not luck. The difference is how they meet the moment. Buddhism has long pointed to this truth. The Buddha taught that suffering does not come from the events themselves, but from our attachment, our craving, and our resistance. When we demand that life obey our desires, stress is inevitable. When we insist that things be permanent in a world that is constantly changing, stress grows. When we fight against reality, we lose every time. The good news is that if stress is not simply imposed on us, it means we have the power to change our relationship with it. Imagine a worker sitting in traffic. The cars are not moving. The clock is ticking. Anger rises. The steering wheel becomes a drum of frustration, and every red brake light feels like an insult. Now imagine another worker in the same traffic. This one turns on the radio, takes a slow breath, and notices the trees by the side of the road. The situation is identical, yet the experience is completely different. The first worker has fed the fire. The second has chosen not to. Buddhism calls this choice mindfulness, the practice of noticing what is happening without being swallowed by it. But mindfulness is not just a technique. It is a way of living. It means we learn to pause before reacting. We learn to observe the rising tension in our chest and the racing stories in our head. And instead of being dragged into them, we breathe. We give space. We choose. And in that choice lies freedom. Stress does not vanish overnight, but its grip weakens. Of course, this is easier said than done. The human mind is trained to worry. It imagines danger because once, long ago, danger was everywhere. To survive, our ancestors had to notice every sound in the bushes, every shadow in the dark. That instinct lives on in us, even though the threats have changed. Today, the predators are not lions but bills, not tigers but text messages. Our nervous system does not know the difference. It reacts the same way: fight, flight, or freeze. This is why even minor stressors can feel overwhelming. We are carrying ancient wiring into a modern world. The Buddha did not deny this. He acknowledged that life contains stress, what he called dukkha, but he also offered a path to meet it differently. That path begins with awareness. It is like turning on the light in a dark room. Suddenly, what felt terrifying becomes clear. The monster in the corner is only a coat on a chair. The fear is still there, but it loses its power. In the same way, when we bring awareness to our stress, when we see the stories we are telling ourselves, we discover that much of the fire is our own creation. Let us take an example that almost everyone knows: the workplace. A boss sends a short, blunt email. One employee reads it and thinks, "I am in trouble. He hates me. My job is at risk." Another reads it and thinks, "He must be busy." I will wait and ask for clarity. The email is the same, yet the stress is vastly different. Buddhism teaches us that our perception, our mental story, is often more powerful than the event itself. And when we realize this, we reclaim power. We cannot control every email, every delay, every demand, but we can learn to meet them with steadiness. The practice begins simply. When stress arises, pause. Feel the breath moving in and out. Notice the tension in the shoulders, the heat in the face, the clenching of the jaw. Name it silently. Stress is here. This naming creates a space between you and the stress. Instead of, I am stressed, it becomes stress is present. That small shift is profound. It reminds us that stress is not who we are. It is a visitor. And like all visitors, it will leave. Over time, this practice grows stronger. We begin to notice stress earlier, before it explodes. We notice it in the first flicker of irritation, the first restless thought. And in that early noticing, we can choose to respond differently. We can take a breath, step back, or simply smile at the mind's old habit of worry. Slowly, the fire weakens. The sparks land, but they do not catch. This is not to say that stress disappears from life. Life will still bring its storms. There will still be illness, loss, deadlines, and disagreements. But through mindfulness, we learn to meet them without drowning. We become like the tree that bends in the wind but does not break. Stress becomes less of an enemy and more of a teacher, reminding us where we are clinging, where we are resisting, where we are demanding life to be other than it is. The power of this shift cannot be overstated. Studies in modern psychology now confirm what the Buddha taught centuries ago, that mindfulness reduces stress, lowers blood pressure, improves sleep, and strengthens resilience. But beyond the statistics, there is something even more important. Mindfulness gives us back our lives. Instead of being lost in endless worry, we begin to taste the present moment. The laughter of a child, the taste of warm tea, the beauty of a sunset. These simple joys return when the mind is no longer trapped in its storm dot, and this is where the path deepens. For mindfulness is only the beginning. Once we see clearly how stress arises, we can begin to transform it at its root. We can begin to question the illusions that fuel it, the belief that we must control everything, that we must always be perfect, that we are alone in our struggle. These illusions are heavy burdens, and the Buddha's teachings invite us to lay them down. To live not in fear, but in trust. To live not in tension, but in freedom. The story of stress is not the story of defeat. It is the story of discovery. For in facing it honestly, we find not only relief, but wisdom. And as we take this first step together, we begin to see that what feels like a curse can, in truth, become a doorway. A doorway that leads to the next understanding, the next release, the next part of our journey. Stress often feels like an invisible hand pressing down our lives, shaping the way we speak, eat, and even love. We may not always admit it, but stress changes us. It changes how we treat others, how we see ourselves, and how much joy we allow into the day. Think of a parent who comes home after a long day of work. The child runs to greet them, full of excitement. But the parent, shoulders tight, mind still racing with unfinished tasks, cannot see the joy. Instead, they snap, they sigh, they push away. Later, they feel guilt, but the moment is gone. This is the true cost of stress, not only the pain we feel inside, but the way it robs us of connection with those we love most. This is why Buddhism does not treat stress as a private problem to hide, but as a universal challenge that touches every life. The Buddha called it one of the marks of existence. Dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness that runs through human life. It is not a flaw in us. It is a reality of being human. Yet the beauty of this teaching is that by naming stress clearly, by looking at it directly, we begin to take away its mystery. It is no longer a vague, shameful weakness. It becomes a condition we can study, understand, and work with. And so, the first step is honesty. To admit, yes, I am stressed. Yes, I am hurting. Many people resist this, thinking that admitting weakness makes them smaller. But in truth, denial only feeds the fire. When we pretend to be fine, we bury the tension deeper, and it erupts in other ways through anger, illness, or despair. Honesty is not defeat. It is courage. It is the beginning of freedom. Once we admit our stress, the next step is compassion. Too often, our inner voice becomes cruel when we feel overwhelmed. It says, "You should be stronger. You are failing. Other people manage better." This inner critic pours salt on the wound. Buddhism offers another voice, the voice of loving kindness. Instead of saying, "I should not feel this way," we can say, "May I be gentle with myself in this moment." Instead of adding blame, we can offer care. Think of how you would comfort a dear friend who is struggling. You would not shout at them to toughen up. You would sit with them, listen, and offer kindness. Why should we treat ourselves with less care than we would offer to another? This practice of self-compassion is not indulgence. It is wisdom. For when the heart softens, stress loosens. The nervous system shifts from fight or flight into rest and healing. The body begins to calm. The mind begins to clear. And from this calmness, better choices arise. Instead of lashing out or collapsing, we find the strength to respond with balance. Compassion is not weakness. It is strength disguised as gentleness. Let us consider another story, one that repeats across countless households. A student prepares for an exam. Fear floods the mind. The thought arises, "If I fail, my life is over." Sleep disappears, appetite fades, and the body grows sick with stress. Yet when the day comes, the exam is only paper and ink. The suffering was not in the questions, but in the story told by the mind. This is the trap of stress. It takes what is real but temporary and wraps it in layers of imagination. It multiplies the pain. But when mindfulness is present, we see the difference. We say, "Yes, this is difficult. Yes, I feel anxious." But we stop the mind from writing the endless script of doom. We return to the breath, to the body, to the present moment. And in that presence, fear loses much of its power. Science now echoes this. Brain scans show that mindfulness changes the structure of the mind. The parts that trigger stress shrink, and the parts that regulate calmness grow. But long before scientists proved it, monks and lay people practiced it, discovering in their own experience that awareness heals. This is why the Buddha compared mindfulness to a lamp in the darkness. Without it, stress multiplies in every shadow. With it, we see clearly, and the shadows dissolve. Yet mindfulness alone is not the full solution. It must be paired with wisdom. Wisdom means seeing the world as it truly is, impermanent, interconnected, and beyond our control. Stress thrives on the illusion of permanence and control. We believe we can make the world obey us if we try hard enough. But reality has its own rhythm. People age, plans fail, bodies grow sick, fortunes change. If we fight these truths, we suffer endlessly. But if we accept them, not with despair, but with clarity, stress loosens its grip. We realize we are not meant to carry the entire universe on our shoulders. We realize we can let go. Letting go does not mean giving up. It does not mean laziness. It means doing what we can with care, but releasing the need to control what lies beyond our reach. Imagine holding a rope tightly. The harder you pull, the deeper it cuts into your skin. Stress is like that rope. We pull and pull, trying to bend life to our will, and the pain deepens. Letting go means opening the hand, loosening the grip. The rope falls, and suddenly the pain stops. The situation may remain, but the suffering lessens dot in practical life. This can be as simple as changing the way we approach the day. Instead of saying, "I must finish everything," or "I am worthless," we can say, "I will do what I can with care, and what is left will wait." Instead of demanding perfection, we can allow progress. Instead of seeing stress as a sign of failure, we can see it as a signal that we are human, that we need rest, that we need compassion. And as we practice this new relationship with stress, something unexpected begins to happen. We discover moments of joy hidden inside the very life we once thought was unbearable. The laughter of a friend, the warmth of sunlight, the simple rhythm of the breath, these become treasures. Stress blinds us to them. Mindfulness opens our eyes. Compassion opens our hearts. Wisdom opens our hands to let go. This is the transformation that Buddhism offers. Not the removal of life's challenges, but the discovery of freedom within them. Stress becomes a teacher, showing us where we cling, where we resist, where we imagine control. Each time we notice and release, we grow lighter. Each time we offer compassion, we grow stronger. Each time we return to the present, we grow freer. And as this chapter closes, let us carry one truth forward. Stress is not a life sentence. It is a passing state. It is not our identity. It is not our destiny. It is an opportunity to wake up, to learn, to soften, to breathe. In the same way that a storm eventually clears, stress too will pass. The question is not whether stress will come, but how we will meet it. Will we meet it with fear or with wisdom? With tension or with compassion? The choice is ours. This choice, repeated again and again, leads us to the next doorway. For if stress is the weight that presses on our hearts, then money is often the chain that binds our minds. It drives us to chase, to worry, to compare, to fear. And just as stress steals our peace, so too does the endless pursuit of wealth. But within the teachings of the Buddha lies another way. A way to meet money not as a master, but as a tool. Not as a source of anxiety, but as a field of generosity and freedom. And so, as we step forward, we leave the conversation of stress and walk into the conversation of money, ready to see with new eyes the role it plays in our suffering and our release. Money sits at the center of modern life. Every morning we wake, and almost without thinking, our minds begin calculating. How much is in the bank account? How much is due in bills? How much must be earned before the month ends? In America, money is not simply currency. It is identity, security, and status. People are measured by the car they drive, the house they live in, the vacations they take, the schools their children attend. And beneath it all runs a constant current of fear. Fear of not having enough, fear of losing what we already have, fear of falling behind. This fear is not just about numbers on a screen. It is about survival. Our ancestors worried about food for the winter, about shelter from the storm, about protection from danger. In today's world, money has replaced those primal concerns. It buys the food, the shelter, the protection. And so, when money feels scarce, our nervous system reacts as though our very lives are at risk. Sleepless nights, pounding hearts, endless arguments, all of these are fueled not by the paper bills themselves, but by the meaning we attach to them. Yet here is the paradox. No matter how much money we have, the fear rarely ends. The worker earning minimum wage fears eviction. The executive with 6 figures fears the next downturn. The millionaire fears losing status. The billionaire fears competitors overtaking him. The numbers may change, but the unease remains. Buddhism explains this clearly. Craving has no finish line. Once one desire is met, another rises. The mind whispers, just a little more, and then I will be safe. But that little more shifts like the horizon. We walk toward it, but it always moves farther away. Consider the story of a man who finally earned the promotion he had been chasing for years. His salary doubled. He moved into a larger home. At first, the joy was intoxicating. He told himself, "Now I can finally relax." But within months, the joy faded. The new home felt normal. The salary felt ordinary. His colleagues had even bigger homes, even higher salaries. And so, the cycle began again. Stress, striving, dissatisfaction. This is the wheel of craving, what the Buddha called the endless cycle of suffering. If money cannot bring lasting peace, what then is its role? Buddhism does not teach that money is evil. It teaches that our attachment to money, our clinging to it as the source of safety and worth, is what causes pain. Money is a tool, like fire. Fire can cook food or burn a house down. The difference lies in how it is used. When money is treated as a servant, it can bring comfort, stability, and even joy through generosity. But when money becomes the master, we are enslaved. We chase it endlessly, fearing its absence and never feeling satisfied with its presence. Let us imagine two families. The first earns modestly, but lives with mindfulness. They budget with care, share meals at home, and celebrate simple joys. When difficulties come, they lean on each other. The second family earns much more, but their minds are consumed with comparison. They chase every new gadget, every new luxury, always needing more to feel equal to their neighbors. Their house is large, but their hearts are restless. The first family may have less in the bank, but they have more peace. The second family may have wealth, but they live in constant hunger. This is the essence of Buddhist wisdom on money. It is not the number that determines freedom, but the relationship. If we treat money as the measure of our worth, we will always feel poor, no matter how much we hold. If we treat money as a neutral tool, we can find balance. And balance is wealth far greater than numbers. Mindfulness offers practical steps. The next time you spend money, pause. Notice the feeling in your body. Is there tension, fear, excitement, pride? Notice the story in your mind. If I buy this, I will be admired. If I save this, I will be safe. Then ask, is this true? Or is this craving speaking? In that pause lies freedom. For the act of noticing breaks the spell. You are no longer trapped by unconscious desire. You are awake, and in awakening, you can choose wisely. Generosity is another doorway. Buddhism places great emphasis on dana, the practice of giving. This is not because the Buddha wanted people to be poor, but because he understood that giving loosens the chains of greed. When we give, we prove to ourselves that our safety does not depend on hoarding. We discover that joy arises not from clinging, but from sharing. A simple gift, a meal to a hungry person, a donation to a cause, even a kind word reminds us that money is not the source of happiness, but a bridge to connection. Generosity also transforms fear. When we cling tightly, we live in constant anxiety of loss. But when we open the hand and give, fear weakens. We realize that abundance is not only measured in what we keep, but in what flows through us. In this way, even the poorest person can taste wealth. For wealth is not the size of the bank account, but the freedom of the heart. Still, the modern world is relentless. Bills must be paid, children must be fed, emergencies must be met. Buddhism does not deny this. It does not ask us to abandon responsibility. It asks us to balance responsibility with perspective. We must earn, yes. We must plan, yes. But we must not let earning and planning devour our lives. There is a middle path between neglect and obsession. This middle path says, work with diligence, but do not sell your soul. Save with wisdom, but do not freeze in fear. Spend with care, but do not worship possessions. Let us return to the image of fire. In the right place, in the right amount, fire warms the home, cooks the meal, lights the dark. Out of control, it destroys everything in its path. Money is the same. When guided by mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, it supports life. When guided by greed, fear, and comparison, it consumes life. And so, the invitation is simple yet radical. Look honestly at your relationship with money. Ask yourself, does it serve me, or do I serve it? Do I use it as a tool, or do I cling to it as identity? Do I spend it mindfully, or do I chase it blindly? Each honest answer is a step toward freedom. This freedom does not mean poverty. It means peace. It means being able to walk into a store without the urge to buy what you do not need. It means checking the bank account without fear defining your day. It means earning a salary without letting that number define your worth. It means giving joyfully without calculation. It means resting in the truth that while money may shape circumstances, it does not define happiness. As we end this first half of our journey with money, let us remember the teaching of the Buddha. True wealth is contentment. Contentment is not laziness. It is not settling for misery. It is the quiet joy of enough. Enough food to nourish the body. Enough shelter to protect the family. Enough resources to live with dignity. And beyond that, the wisdom to know that more will not fill the emptiness inside. Only awakening, compassion, and love can do that. In the next step of this exploration, we will dive deeper. We will look not only at the fear of not having enough, but also at the fear of losing what we already have. We will see how clinging to wealth breeds anxiety, and how letting go, even in small ways, plants seeds of peace. We will explore the illusions of security and the liberating truth that safety cannot be purchased, but must be cultivated within. If the first wound around money is the fear of not having enough, then the second wound is the fear of losing what we already have. This fear is subtle, yet it shapes countless lives. People guard their savings like prisoners guard their last meal. They check their accounts every hour, follow the markets obsessively, worry endlessly about the next crisis. Even when wealth is secure, the mind whispers, "What if it all disappears?" And in that whisper, peace is stolen. This is why wealth does not guarantee happiness. For many, it increases anxiety. A poor man worries about tomorrow's meal. A rich man worries about his empire collapsing. Both are restless. The scale is different, but the suffering is the same. The Buddha called this clinging the attachment to possessions as though they were permanent, as though they could shield us from the impermanence of life. But impermanence does not bow to money. A storm can destroy a mansion as easily as a hut. Illness can strike the wealthy as easily as the poor. Death comes for all. The problem is not money itself, but the illusion of control that money creates. We believe that if we accumulate enough, we can escape life's uncertainties. Yet history shows otherwise. Great empires collapsed. Fortunes were lost overnight. Markets crashed. Banks failed. None of these were prevented by wealth. And so the wise person turns inward, asking, if money cannot guarantee safety, what can? The Buddha's answer is clear. Safety lies in wisdom, compassion, and inner balance. These cannot be taken by fire, flood, or thief. They remain when all else is gone. Imagine a woman who saves diligently, builds her retirement, invests with care. This is wise. But if her entire sense of peace rests on numbers, she is vulnerable. Every drop in the market sends her heart racing. Every rumor of recession steals her sleep. Now imagine another woman who also saves and invests, but who also practices mindfulness. She remembers that nothing is permanent. She breathes when fear arises. She knows her worth is not tied to wealth. When markets fall, she adjusts, but she does not collapse. Her anchor is inside, not in numbers. She is truly rich. This is the heart of Buddhist economics. To cultivate right livelihood, right effort, and right view. Right livelihood means earning in ways that do not harm others. For money gained through cruelty or deceit carries suffering within it. Right effort means balancing diligence with rest, knowing that endless work without pause becomes slavery. Right view means seeing money for what it is, a tool, not a savior. When these principles guide us, money becomes lighter. It supports life without consuming it. The danger of clinging to wealth is not only personal anxiety, but also social harm. When greed takes over, communities fracture. People exploit one another. The gap between rich and poor widens. The Buddha warned against this, teaching that generosity and fairness must guide the flow of resources. In a healthy society, wealth is shared, not hoarded. When a family eats well while the neighbor starves, both suffer. One from hunger, the other from the hardening of the heart. True prosperity comes when giving flows as naturally as breathing. This is why generosity is emphasized again and again. When we give, we loosen the knot of fear. We prove to ourselves that life does not collapse when we let go. In fact, life often expands. Relationships deepen. Communities strengthen. Joy grows. A child who receives a gift of school supplies, a neighbor who receives a warm meal, a stranger who receives kindness. These are reminders that wealth is not measured by what we keep, but by the lives we touch. Consider the story of a farmer who had only a small field. One year, his harvest was meager. Yet when a hungry traveler came by, the farmer offered him food. The traveler ate, blessed the farmer, and continued. That night, the farmer felt a peace deeper than any harvest could bring. He had little, but in giving, he discovered abundance. The Buddha often used such stories to illustrate that generosity frees the giver as much as it helps the receiver. Modern life often tells the opposite story. We are told to protect, to save, to secure, to never risk. And yes, there is wisdom in saving. But saving without generosity breeds fear. The heart grows small. The hand grows stiff. Soon, even abundance feels like poverty. No amount is ever enough. But when giving becomes natural, even modest means feel rich. A cup of tea shared with a friend feels like treasure. A simple meal offered to the poor feels like wealth. This shift is not only spiritual, it is practical. Studies show that generous people live longer, healthier, happier lives. Their stress levels drop, their immune systems strengthen, their relationships flourish. Once again, science confirms what the Buddha taught long ago. Clinging creates suffering, giving creates freedom, but perhaps the deepest illusion money creates is the illusion of identity. In America, wealth often defines who we are. A person with a luxury car is treated with respect. A person without is often ignored. Children grow up believing that their worth depends on income, that success is measured by possessions. And so, from an early age, they chase, compare, compete. They learn to value themselves, not for kindness or wisdom, but for numbers. This is a tragedy. For when money defines identity, the self becomes fragile. A single loss shatters confidence. A single failure breeds shame. The Buddha invites us to look deeper. He reminds us that identity built on possessions is an illusion. Houses crumble, jobs end, markets shift. But kindness, honesty, mindfulness, these are treasures that cannot be taken. They form an identity that no recession can destroy. When we anchor our worth in these qualities, money becomes what it was always meant to be, a helper, not a master. And so, the path forward is clear. Earn with integrity. Spend with mindfulness. Save with balance. Give with joy. And above all, remember that true wealth is not in the account, but in the heart. When we practice this, money loses its power to enslave. It becomes like water, necessary, useful, flowing. But we no longer drown in it. We drink, we share, we live. As we close this chapter on money, let us carry one final reflection. Imagine standing at the end of life, looking back. What moments will matter most? Will it be the numbers on a statement, the possessions in a house? Or will it be the love shared, the kindness offered, the peace cultivated? The answer is clear. Money may buy comfort, but it cannot buy meaning. Meaning is created in how we live, how we love, how we awaken. And now, having walked through the weight of money, we turn to another burden of modern life, relationships. For even when the bank account is stable, the heart aches in the absence of harmony. Arguments, betrayals, loneliness, unmet expectations. These are storms as fierce as any financial worry. But just as Buddhism offers wisdom for stress and money, it also offers profound guidance for love, friendship, and connection. And so we step forward, ready to explore the joys and pains of relationships and the path to peace within them. Human beings are wired for connection. From the moment we are born, we search for the gaze of a parent, the touch of a hand, the comfort of being held. Relationships are not luxuries. They are necessities. They give us belonging, identity, and meaning. Yet for many, they are also a source of deep pain. The very bonds that promise joy can become chains of disappointment, conflict, and heartbreak. In the modern world, where time is scarce and demands are endless, relationships are strained more than ever. Couples fall into silence after years of unspoken resentment. Friends drift apart, each consumed by their own busyness. Families fracture over money, politics, or old wounds. Loneliness spreads even in crowded cities, where people live shoulder to shoulder but feel worlds apart. Technology, which was meant to connect us, often deepens the divide. We scroll through the highlight reels of others' lives, comparing, envying, and feeling more isolated than before. Beneath the surface, countless hearts ache with the question, why is love so hard? The Buddha did not ignore this question. He saw that relationships, like all things, are shaped by craving and clinging. We want others to fulfill our needs, to complete us, to behave as we imagine they should. When they do not, we suffer. We confuse love with possession, friendship with control, family with obligation. In our attempts to hold tightly, we squeeze the life out of connection. True love becomes distorted into demand. True friendship becomes burden. Family becomes battlefield. To understand this, we must begin with the nature of desire. Desire is not wrong in itself. It is natural to want closeness, to want care. The problem arises when desire turns into attachment, when we believe our happiness depends entirely on another person's behavior. We say, if my partner changes, then I will be happy. If my child succeeds, then I will be at peace. If my friend never leaves me, then I will feel whole. But life does not obey these conditions. People change, disappoint, and eventually leave, whether through distance, conflict, or death. If our happiness depends on control, then suffering is certain. Buddhism offers another way, to shift from attachment to compassion. Compassion says, I love you, not because you fulfill my needs, but because I wish for your well-being. Compassion is not blind. It sees flaws and struggles. But instead of demanding perfection, it offers patience. Instead of clinging, it gives space. This does not mean tolerating abuse or staying in harmful situations. Compassion includes wisdom, and wisdom sometimes means leaving. But even when leaving, compassion carries no hatred, no desire for revenge. It seeks peace for both sides. Consider a couple in constant conflict. Each partner demands the other to change. You never listen. You never care. The arguments spiral. each word sharpening the wound. Both crave love, but both fight for control. Now imagine the same couple pausing, breathing, practicing mindfulness. One says, "When you speak harshly, I feel hurt." The other listens, not with defense, but with awareness. This small shift transforms blame into vulnerability, attack into invitation. Compassion enters, and with it, the possibility of healing. Mindfulness is the bridge here. When we bring awareness into relationships, we notice our patterns. We see how quickly anger flares, how easily we shut down, how often we replay old stories. With awareness, we can pause before reacting. Instead of shouting, we can breathe. Instead of retreating, we can stay present. This pause is powerful. It interrupts cycles of pain and opens the door to new ways of relating. But awareness also reveals uncomfortable truths. It shows us that sometimes our pain in relationships is not caused by the other person at all, but by our own projections. We expect them to carry the weight of our loneliness, our insecurity, our unhealed wounds. We ask them to be saviors when they are only human. This is why so many relationships feel unsatisfying. We are asking the impossible. No partner, friend, or child can complete the self. Completion must come from within. The Buddha taught that the root of love is not in another, but in ourselves. When we cultivate loving kindness within, we stop demanding it from outside. When we feel whole in ourselves, relationships become gifts rather than lifelines. We enjoy them deeply, but do not collapse when they shift. We love fully, but do not cling desperately. This is the freedom of non-attachment. Love that is steady, open, and resilient. Think of a lotus flower. It grows in muddy water, yet rises above, pure and radiant. Relationships too can be filled with mud, conflict, misunderstanding, pain. But with mindfulness and compassion, love can rise above, unstained by bitterness. This does not mean perfection. It means the courage to meet difficulties with openness instead of blame. It means choosing understanding over victory, patience over pride. Yet loneliness remains a shadow for many. Even surrounded by people, we feel unseen, unheard. Buddhism invites us to see loneliness not as a punishment, but as a teacher. It reveals our hunger for connection, but it also shows where we avoid connecting with ourselves. When we sit in stillness, breathing, noticing the rise and fall of the body, we realize we are not truly alone. Life itself is present. The breath, the beating heart, the sounds around us. This awareness softens loneliness. It reminds us that connection is not only external, but also internal. From this place, we can enter relationships not from desperation, but from fullness. We no longer say, "I need you to complete me." We say, "I want to share this journey with you." This shift transforms love from dependency into generosity. It frees friendships from fear, marriages from suffocation, families from endless demands. It allows connection to breathe. The path is not easy. Old habits return. Anger rises, fear whispers, disappointment lingers. But each time we return to mindfulness, each time we choose compassion, the bonds grow lighter, freer, stronger. Relationships become less about control and more about presence. And presence is the soil where love truly grows. As we close this first half of our journey into relationships, let us carry one truth. Love without clinging is possible. Friendship without fear is possible. Family without endless blame is possible. The key is not in changing others, but in transforming the way we meet them with awareness, compassion, and non-attachment. In the next step, we will go deeper, exploring the raw wounds of betrayal, the pain of loss, and the healing power of forgiveness. We will see how even in heartbreak, wisdom can bloom, and how even in endings, love can remain. When we speak of relationships, we cannot ignore the moments of deepest heartbreak. Trust is broken. Words are spoken that cannot be unsaid. A partner walks away. A friend betrays a secret. A child grows distant. These moments cut deeper than almost any other pain, for they strike at the very core of our need to belong. We wonder, how can I ever recover from this? The wound feels permanent, as if a part of us has been torn out and lost forever. The Buddha understood this pain. He taught that clinging to permanence in relationships leads to suffering, because all things, even love, are subject to change. People change. Circumstances change. Feelings rise and fall like the tides. When we cling to the belief that relationships must always stay the same, heartbreak becomes unbearable. But when we open to impermanence, we begin to see heartbreak differently. The ending of a relationship is not proof that love was false. It is proof that life is ever moving. Love existed, it nourished us, and now it has shifted form. This does not mean that loss is easy. It is not. The grief of losing a loved one, whether through betrayal, separation, or death, is profound. Tears must be shed. The body must tremble. The heart must ache. Buddhism does not ask us to bypass this grief. It invites us to feel it fully without turning it into endless stories of blame. Grief is the price of love, and to grieve is to honor the depth of our connection. What mindfulness adds is the ability to hold that grief gently, without letting it define our entire being. Consider the practice of forgiveness. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. Many believe it means excusing harm or pretending it did not matter. But true forgiveness is different. It is the decision to release ourselves from the prison of resentment. When we hold on to anger, we carry the one who hurt us on our backs, day and night. We replay the wound again and again, keeping it alive. Forgiveness is setting that burden down. It does not mean forgetting, and it does not mean trusting again blindly. It means freeing the heart from hatred, so it can heal. Imagine a man betrayed by his closest friend. For years, he carries the bitterness, unable to trust anyone again. His life grows small, his heart hard. One day, through meditation, he sees that his friend's betrayal was born from ignorance and fear, not from a desire to destroy him. Slowly, he releases the grip of anger. He does not call the friend or rebuild the bond, but in his own heart, he lets go. Peace returns. This is the gift of forgiveness, not reconciliation, but liberation. Another aspect of healing in relationships is communication. So much suffering comes not from what is done, but from what is left unsaid. We assume, we guess, we expect others to read our minds. When they fail, we grow resentful. The Buddha encouraged right speech, speech that is truthful, kind, and timely. In relationships, this means expressing our needs with honesty, but also with care. It means saying, "I feel hurt when you withdraw," instead of, "You never care about me." The first opens a door. The second slams it shut. Practicing right speech also means listening deeply. Most of us listen only to reply, to defend, or to win. Rarely do we listen simply to understand. But when we do, something shifts. The other person feels seen, and defensiveness melts. True listening is an act of love. It says, "You matter enough for me to set aside my own thoughts and hear you fully." This kind of listening can repair wounds that once seemed permanent, and yet not all relationships can or should be repaired. Sometimes the most compassionate act is to let go. The Buddha taught that clinging to what harms us is like holding on to a burning coal, expecting it to hurt the other person. We only burn ourselves. In cases of abuse, manipulation, or deep incompatibility, wisdom calls us to release the bond. Letting go may bring sadness, but it also brings freedom. To walk away with compassion, without hatred, is one of the highest forms of courage. Loneliness often follows endings. The silence of an empty home, the absence of a familiar voice, the ache of no longer being chosen, all of these can feel unbearable. Yet within loneliness lies a hidden doorway. It invites us back to ourselves. It teaches us to sit in our own company without fear. When we practice mindfulness in solitude, we discover that we are not empty after all. There is breath. There is awareness. There is life flowing through us. This realization transforms loneliness into solitude, absence into presence. And from this presence, new connections become possible. We meet others not from desperation, but from wholeness. We do not say, "Please complete me." We say, "Let us walk together." Such relationships are lighter, freer, healthier. They are rooted not in fear, but in love. The greatest teaching on relationships may be this: love is not possession. Love is not control. Love is not demand. Love is the wish for another's happiness, whether or not it includes us. It is the willingness to let others be who they are, even when that means they walk away. This kind of love cannot be broken by betrayal or loss, for it is not bound to conditions. It flows like water, nourishing all it touches. As we end this exploration of relationships, let us hold on to one truth. Connection is both fragile and resilient. It will change, it will hurt, it will heal, it will surprise. We cannot avoid the storms, but we can learn to sail through them with compassion as our compass and mindfulness as our anchor. Relationships will always be part of the human journey, but how we walk through them determines whether they are prisons or paths to awakening. And now, having seen the joys and pains of human bonds, we turn to another shadow that haunts modern life: anxiety. Anxiety is the restless whisper that never quiets, the knot in the stomach, the racing mind that imagines danger everywhere. Just as stress and money weigh us down, anxiety grips us from within. But here too, the Buddha's wisdom offers a way through, not by suppressing fear, but by meeting it with awareness, courage, and compassion. Anxiety is the restless hum beneath modern life. Even when the room is quiet, even when nothing is wrong, the mind trembles with, what if? What if I lose my job? What if my child fails? What if illness comes? What if the worst happens tomorrow? Anxiety is not just fear of danger. It is fear of possibilities. It is the mind racing ahead, inventing disasters before they arrive, and chaining us to futures that may never exist. In America, anxiety has become almost normal. Children feel it before exams. Adults feel it in traffic, in offices, in grocery stores. Retirees feel it as they check their savings, wondering if it will last. The world moves quickly, news flashes constantly, and every screen tells us reasons to worry. We try to outrun anxiety by staying busy, but the moment the noise fades, the anxious hum returns. Sleep is stolen, digestion is disturbed, joy is dulled. The body holds the tension like a clenched fist, never fully relaxing. The Buddha described this experience long before psychologists named it. He spoke of the restless mind, like a monkey swinging endlessly from branch to branch, never still, never at peace. Anxiety is this monkey at its most frantic, searching for control in a world that cannot be controlled. The root of anxiety is the refusal to live in the present. The mind insists on rehearsing the future or rehashing the past. But the present moment, the only place where life actually happens, is abandoned. Imagine sitting in a quiet park. The sun is warm, the breeze gentle, the trees alive with birds. Yet the anxious mind is elsewhere. It is replaying yesterday's mistake or imagining tomorrow's failure. The body is safe, but the mind is trapped in imagined storms. This is the tragedy of anxiety. It robs us of peace in the present by chaining us to fears of the future. Mindfulness offers a profound antidote. When we bring awareness to the breath, to to the body, to the sensations of this moment, anxiety loses some of its grip. The breath becomes an anchor. The body becomes a home. The mind, instead of swinging wildly, begins to settle. This does not erase anxiety instantly, but it changes our relationship with it. Instead of being swallowed, we observe. Instead of believing every fearful thought, we see it as a passing cloud. One of the most healing practices in Buddhism is noting. When a thought of fear arises, we simply name it, worrying. When tension grips the chest, we note, tightness. When the mind races ahead, we whisper, planning. These simple notes separate us from the storm. We no longer say, I am anxiety. We say, anxiety is here. That shift is small, but it is everything. It gives us space. It reminds us that anxiety is a visitor, not our identity. But why does anxiety feel so powerful? Because at its root lies aversion. We resist uncertainty. We crave control. We demand that life guarantees safety, predictability, permanence. But life offers none of these. Storms come. Jobs change. Health falters. Loved ones leave. The anxious mind believes that if it worries enough, it can prevent these realities. But worry does not stop impermanence. It only exhausts us. The Buddha's teaching invites us to face impermanence directly, to stop fighting it, and in doing so, to find peace. Consider the parable of the poisoned arrow. A man is struck by an arrow, but instead of pulling it out, he insists on knowing who shot it, what kind of wood it was made from, what feathers were used. He delays treatment and dies. Anxiety works the same way. Instead of facing the present pain, we spin in endless questions. Why me? What if it gets worse? What if it never ends? The more we question, the deeper the poison spreads. Healing begins when we stop interrogating and simply breathe, notice, and tend to the wound with compassion. Another key practice is compassion for the anxious self. So often, we add judgment to anxiety. We say, why can't I calm down? What's wrong with me? This self-criticism only fuels more anxiety. Buddhism teaches metta-loving kindness as a medicine. When anxiety rises, instead of scolding ourselves, we can gently say, may I be safe. May I be at peace. May I meet this moment with kindness. These words soften the edges of fear. They remind us that anxiety is not a flaw, but a human condition, a sign of caring too much rather than too little. There is also wisdom in seeing anxiety as energy. Fear quickens the heart, sharpens the senses, prepares us to act. In small doses, this is useful. It kept our ancestors alive. But in modern life, this survival system is triggered constantly, even when no danger exists. Instead of fighting the energy, we can redirect it. We can channel it into mindful action, exercising, creating, serving others. In this way, anxiety is transformed from enemy into teacher, from prison into fuel for awakening. One modern example illustrates this well. A young woman suffers panic attacks before public speaking. Each time, her body shakes, her breath shortens, her mind screams, run. Through mindfulness, she learns to meet the sensations directly. She notices the pounding heart without judgment. She names the trembling as energy. She breathes with it instead of against it. Slowly, she discovers that the very sensations she once feared are not enemies, but signs of her body's vitality. Over time, panic loses its power. The storm still comes, but she no longer fears the rain. The Buddha also pointed to the importance of community in facing anxiety. Alone, the mind spins endlessly. But when we sit with others in mindfulness, when we share our fears openly, the burden lightens. We see that we are not alone. Others too carry restless minds, trembling bodies, sleepless nights. This shared humanity softens shame. Together, we practice presence. Together, we breathe. And together, we discover that anxiety is not a personal failure, but a universal challenge, one that can be met with patience and compassion. As we close this first half of our journey into anxiety, let us carry one reflection. Anxiety may whisper endlessly of danger, but the present moment whispers of safety. The chair beneath us holds. The breath continues. The heart beats. Life flows. Anxiety imagines 1,000 storms, but here, now, the sky is open. The more we return to this truth, the more freedom we taste. And in the next step, we will go deeper still, exploring how to release the deeper roots of anxiety, how to find courage in uncertainty, and how to live with a calm heart, even when the world around us trembles. Anxiety is like a shadow. It stretches longer the more we run from it. The harder we try to push it away, the more it seems to follow. We read books, take pills, chase distractions, yet the quiet whisper of unease returns. Buddhism teaches us that the path to freedom is not escape, but turning toward the shadow with courage. When we stop running, when we pause and breathe, we begin to see that anxiety is not a monster, but a messenger. What does it tell us? Often, anxiety reveals our resistance to uncertainty. Life is filled with unknowns, but the anxious mind insists on certainty. It says, "Tell me what will happen. Guarantee my safety. Promise me I will not suffer." But reality does not make such promises. To live is to face the unknown each day. Will the job last? Will health remain? Will those we love stay near? None of these are certain. And yet, the anxious mind believes that if it worries enough, it can force certainty. This is an impossible task, and the impossibility fuels endless fear. The practice of equanimity offers another way. Equanimity does not mean indifference. It means balance. It is the calm center of a storm, the steady flame in the wind. When we cultivate equanimity, we acknowledge uncertainty without collapsing. We say, yes, life is unpredictable. Yes, the future is unknown, but I will meet it with steadiness. This is not resignation, but strength, the strength to remain grounded when the ground itself feels shaky. Consider the image of waves on the ocean. Anxiety is like fighting each wave, trying to push the water back with our hands. Equanimity is learning to float. The waves still come, but instead of fighting, we rise and fall with them. We trust that the ocean will carry us, that the storm will pass. Floating does not remove the waves, but it transforms the struggle. One practice for cultivating this steadiness is conscious breathing. The breath is always in the present. When the mind races into the future, the breath brings it back. Each inhale says, here. Each exhale says, now. Slowly, the grip of imagined futures loosens. Another practice is body awareness. Anxiety often lives in the body as tightness, heat, trembling. By noticing these sensations without judgment, we prevent them from spiraling into panic. We see them for what they are, energy moving through. But perhaps the most radical practice is acceptance. Instead of saying, I must eliminate anxiety, we say, I allow anxiety to be here. This may sound strange, but acceptance removes the second arrow. The first arrow is the feeling of anxiety itself, the racing heart, the restless thoughts. The second arrow is our resistance. This is unbearable. This must stop. When we accept, we remove the second arrow. The pain is still there, but the suffering lessens. We breathe with the racing heart. We sit with the restless mind. Slowly, the storm calms, not because we forced it, but because we welcomed it. Forgiveness is also part of healing anxiety. Forgiving ourselves for being afraid. Forgiving ourselves for not being perfectly calm. So many people carry shame about anxiety, as if it means they are weak. But the Buddha taught that all beings experience fear. To feel anxiety is not failure. It is part of being human. When we treat ourselves with kindness, the shame softens, and healing begins. Another teaching that loosens anxiety is impermanence. Anxiety feels eternal when we are inside it, as if the fear will never end. But nothing in life is permanent. The Buddha compared feelings to clouds. They form, they drift, they dissolve. Anxiety is no different. Every wave of fear has a beginning, a peak, and an end. When we observe this directly, we stop believing the lie that anxiety is forever. We remember that this too shall pass. Community plays a vital role. Alone, anxiety multiplies. In silence, fears echo louder. But when we share our struggles, when we sit with others in mindfulness, anxiety loses its isolation. We hear someone else say, "I too feel restless. I too wake in the night with fear." And suddenly, the burden feels lighter. The practice of Sangha community reminds us that healing is not solitary. We walk together. We breathe together. And together, we discover courage. One of the deepest transformations comes when we see anxiety not as an enemy, but as a doorway. Anxiety shows us where we cling. It reveals our illusions of control. It highlights our resistance to impermanence. In this way, anxiety becomes a teacher. Each time it arises, it invites us to practice awareness, compassion, and equanimity. It asks us to return to the present, to soften the grip of fear, to trust the flow of life. There is a story of a monk who was terrified of tigers in the forest. Each night, he imagined claws and teeth in the shadows. His teacher told him, "Go to the forest. Sit with your fear. Invite the tiger in your mind to sit beside you." At first, the monk shook with terror. But night after night, he sat. He breathed. He whispered, "Fear is here." Slowly, the fear lost its bite. The monk realized that the tiger in his mind was more dangerous than any real one. Anxiety, too, is often a tiger of the mind. When we sit with it, it shrinks not as we close this exploration of anxiety. Let us hold a truth both simple and profound. The future is unknown, but we can be present now. Anxiety imagines countless storms, but in this moment, we are breathing. In this moment, we are alive. And in this moment, peace is possible. The path does not promise that fear will vanish forever. It promises that we can meet fear differently. We can meet it with breath instead of panic, with compassion instead of judgment, with equanimity instead of collapse. Anxiety may return, but it will no longer rule us. We become like the mountain. The winds blow, the storms rage, but the mountain remains. And now, having walked through the restless whisper of anxiety, we turn to another weight of modern life: loneliness. In a world more connected than ever, many feel more isolated than ever. Social media shows endless faces, but the heart feels unseen. Crowds surround us, but the soul feels alone. Loneliness is its own form of suffering, and like anxiety, it carries both pain and opportunity. With the guidance of the Buddha, we will explore how solitude can become strength, how loneliness can open the heart, and how true connection begins within. Loneliness is one of the deepest aches of the human heart. It does not always come from being physically alone. A person can sit at a crowded dinner table, surrounded by laughter, and still feel invisible. A partner can share the same bed, yet the silence between them feels like miles of empty desert. A worker can pass thousands of faces in the city each day, yet carry the heavy thought, "No one truly sees me." Loneliness is not about the absence of people. It is about the absence of connection. In America, surveys show that loneliness has become a quiet epidemic. More than half of adults say they often feel isolated. Teenagers spend hours on screens, yet struggle to find genuine friends. The elderly live longer lives, but often in solitude, their children far away. Technology promised to bridge the gap, but for many, it has widened it. Social media offers endless images of togetherness, yet those very images deepen comparison and separation. Loneliness whispers, "You are the only one who feels this way," even though millions share the same pain. The Buddha understood loneliness, not as a modern invention, but as part of the human experience. He saw that the root of loneliness is the illusion of separation, the belief that we are cut off, isolated, and incomplete. In truth, we are never separate. Our breath depends on trees. Our bodies depend on food grown by countless hands. Our lives are woven with countless others. But the mind, when caught in craving and self-centered thought, forgets this web of connection. It builds walls. Me versus them, mine versus yours. Inside those walls, loneliness grows. To heal loneliness, Buddhism invites us to dissolve the walls. This begins not with seeking others to fill us, but with reconnecting to ourselves. The first step is to sit quietly and breathe, to feel the body as it is, to notice the breath as it enters and leaves. In this simple act, we realize that we are not truly alone. Life is here. The earth holds us. The air nourishes us. The heartbeat echoes within. Loneliness shrinks when we remember that we are part of life itself. But loneliness also reveals a deeper truth, our longing for love. This longing is not weakness. It is a sign of our true nature. We are beings of connection, born to care and to be cared for. The problem is not the longing itself, but the way we cling to it. We demand that others fill the void completely. We expect partners, friends, or family to erase our loneliness entirely. This expectation creates disappointment because no one person can carry such a burden. The Buddha teaches that true connection begins not by demanding from others, but by cultivating love within ourselves. Metta, meditation loving kindness. Practice is one of the most powerful tools for this. We begin by silently repeating phrases such as, "May I be happy," "May I be safe," "May I live with ease." At first, this may feel strange, especially if we carry self-criticism. But slowly, the heart softens. We begin to treat ourselves as a dear friend. From there, we extend the wishes outward. May you be happy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. We imagine a loved one, then a neutral person, then even someone with whom we struggle. As the circle widens, the walls of isolation crumble. We remember that all beings share the same longing: to be happy, to be free from suffering. Loneliness dissolves in this recognition of shared humanity. Consider a man sitting alone after his divorce. The house is quiet. The bed feels empty. The loneliness is sharp. He begins to practice loving kindness. At first, he feels resistance. His mind says, "This is useless," but he continues, "May I be happy. May I live with ease." Slowly, tears come. The harshness inside begins to soften. Then he imagines his ex-partner. Instead of cursing, he whispers, "May you be happy." Something shifts. The loneliness does not vanish, but it transforms. It becomes tenderness, a reminder of the love that once existed and the love that still lives within him. Another aspect of loneliness is the fear of being forgotten. We want to be remembered, to be valued. This fear drives much of modern life, the chase for fame, likes, followers. But Buddhism reminds us that our worth is not measured by recognition. It is measured by presence. The quiet kindness we offer to a stranger, the gentle word we speak to a child, the care we give to the earth. These acts ripple outward, whether anyone notices or not. True connection is not about applause. It is about love in action. Community is also essential. The Buddha placed great emphasis on Sangha, the spiritual community. He knew that walking the path alone is difficult. When we gather with others in mindfulness, When we share our struggles openly, loneliness softens. We realize that others too feel unseen, unheard, uncertain. Together, we breathe. Together, we practice. The simple act of sitting in silence with others, of chanting, of listening, creates bonds that words cannot. Even if our personal lives feel empty, the Sangha reminds us that we belong to something greater. But what about those who truly live in solitude? Those without family, without close friends? For them, Buddhism offers the practice of embracing solitude as teacher. Loneliness says, you are empty. Solitude says, you are whole. The difference lies in perspective. When we resist being alone, it feels like punishment. When we accept it, it becomes space for growth. The Buddha himself often retreated into solitude, not to escape people, but to deepen connection with life. In the silence of the forest, he heard the truth of impermanence, interconnection, and compassion. We too can discover that silence is not emptiness, but fullness waiting to be noticed. In practical life, healing loneliness may involve both inner and outer steps. Inner steps include mindfulness, loving kindness, and acceptance. Outer steps include reaching out, serving others, building community. Loneliness often shrinks when we shift the focus outward. When we volunteer, help a neighbor, or simply smile at a stranger, we break the cycle of self-centered isolation. We remember that others need us as much as we need them. In giving connection, we receive it. As we close this first half of our exploration into loneliness, let us hold this reflection. Loneliness is not a flaw in us. It is a signal, a reminder of our deep need for love and connection. When we meet it with mindfulness, when we soften into compassion, when we act with generosity, loneliness transforms. It becomes not a prison, but a doorway. A doorway back to ourselves, back to others, back to life. In the next step, we will look even deeper. We will explore the pain of abandonment, the wound of rejection, the ache of being unseen. And we will discover how, even in the darkest loneliness, the Buddha's teachings light a path toward freedom. Loneliness often deepens when it is tied to rejection and abandonment. Few wounds cut as sharply as the feeling of being unwanted. A child ignored by parents carries the ache into adulthood. A friend excluded from the group feels invisible. A partner left behind wonders, what was wrong with me? These questions echo long after the moment passes. They settle into the heart as stories. I am unlovable. I am not enough. I do not belong. Loneliness becomes more than a passing emotion. It becomes an identity. Buddha saw how dangerous these stories can be. They are born from ignorance, not truth. For in reality, our worth is not determined by how others treat us. People act from their own confusion, fear, and pain. A parent who withholds love may be trapped in their own wounds. A friend who betrays may be blinded by insecurity. Their actions reflect their struggles, not our value. Yet the lonely heart takes the blame. It says, I am the reason. This mistaken belief deepens the isolation. Mindfulness interrupts this cycle. When rejection stirs the thought, I am unworthy, mindfulness steps in. This is a thought. It is not reality. When abandonment brings the story, I am alone forever, mindfulness whispers. This is fear. It will pass. Slowly, we stop fusing with the stories. We see them as clouds drifting through the sky of the mind. They are not who we are. Beneath them remains the open sky of awareness, untouched by rejection. Another antidote is self-compassion. When loneliness says, no one cares for me, self-compassion replies, I care for me. This may sound small, but it is profound. The practice of placing a hand on the heart, breathing gently, and saying, may I be safe, may I be loved, may I belong, reclaims the care we once demanded from others. It fills the well from within. When we learn to be our own friend, the sting of rejection lessens. We may still feel pain, but we no longer collapse under it. Forgiveness also plays a role. Not forgiveness that excuses harm, but forgiveness that frees us. When we hold on to resentment against those who abandoned us, we chain ourselves to their actions. We replay the pain endlessly, feeding loneliness. Forgiveness cuts the chain. It says, I release you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. In letting go, we make space for new connections, new love, new belonging. Connection itself often begins with small steps. Loneliness convinces us to withdraw, to protect ourselves from more pain. But isolation breeds more isolation. The Buddha encouraged reaching out, not from desperation, but from compassion. We can start with simple acts, greeting a neighbor, joining a group, volunteering time. Each step chips away at the wall. Each act reminds us that connection is possible. Slowly, belonging grows. Service is one of the most powerful cures for loneliness. When we help others, we shift focus from our own emptiness to another's need. The simple act of listening to someone else, of offering support, breaks the illusion of isolation. A lonely elder who volunteers at a school finds joy in children's laughter. A grieving widow who serves meals at a shelter discovers warmth in the smiles of strangers. Giving creates bonds where none seemed possible. Yet even with these practices, moments of deep solitude will still arise. Nights when the house feels too quiet. Days when the phone does not ring. In those moments, Buddhism invites us to sit with the loneliness itself, not as enemy, but as teacher. We breathe into the ache. We ask, what does this loneliness show me? Often, it reveals our longing for connection, our tenderness, our humanity. Far from being weakness, this longing is proof of the heart's capacity for love. The story of the Buddha's own journey reflects this. Before his awakening, he sat alone under the Bodhi tree, facing every fear and desire. In the silence, loneliness surely visited him. But instead of fleeing, he stayed. He faced the emptiness until it transformed into clarity. From that solitude, compassion for all beings blossomed. His story shows us that loneliness, if faced with courage, can be the soil where wisdom grows. Impermanence again becomes a guiding truth. No feeling, even the sharpest loneliness, lasts forever. It rises, peaks, fades. Knowing this, we can endure with patience. We can whisper to ourselves, this moment will pass. And as we wait, we can water seeds of connection through mindfulness, compassion, and generosity. The paradox of loneliness is that it feels like separation, yet it can lead us back to unity. When we face our own loneliness, we become more sensitive to the loneliness of others. We notice the quiet sadness in a stranger's eyes, the hesitation in a colleague's voice, the longing behind a child's questions. Our own ache makes us more compassionate. In reaching out to them, we heal both their hearts and our own doubt. As we close this chapter, let us hold on to one truth. Loneliness is not proof of failure. It is proof of our humanity. It shows that we are beings of connection, longing to love and be loved. When we meet loneliness with mindfulness, compassion, and courage, it becomes not a prison, but a doorway. A doorway to self-discovery, to service, to deeper love. And as we step through that doorway, we encounter another powerful force in human life, anger. Where loneliness aches quietly, anger burns loudly. It shouts, it pushes, it destroys. But like loneliness, anger too carries hidden lessons. In the next chapter, we will face the fire of anger and learn how the Buddha's teachings can transform it from poison into wisdom, from weapon into strength. Anger is fire. It rises suddenly, hot and consuming, and before we know it, words are spoken, actions are taken, damage is done. Anger promises power, but more often it leaves only ashes. A spouse slams the door. A friend shouts a cruel word. A stranger cuts us off in traffic. The spark is small, but the fire spreads quickly. In moments, reason disappears. The heart pounds, the face burns, the breath shortens. We feel alive in the heat of it, yet afterward, exhaustion and regret remain. Modern life fuels anger at every turn. We are stuck in traffic, scrolling through online arguments, watching endless news stories designed to provoke outrage. We face constant frustration, technical failures, workplace politics, family conflicts. The culture even celebrates anger. Television, sports, and politics often portray it as strength, as proof of passion. But underneath the surface, anger eats away at health, relationships, and peace of mind. Doctors link it to heart disease, ulcers, and insomnia. Families break apart under its weight. Communities fracture when anger dominates discourse. Buddha compared anger to holding a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. Yet we are the ones who get burned first. This image is as true today as it was 2,000 years ago. Anger punishes us long before it touches anyone else. It poisons the blood, clouds the mind, and blinds the heart. And yet, anger persists because it feels justified. We tell ourselves, they hurt me. They disrespected me. I must defend myself. But in clinging to this story, we feed the fire that burns us. The first step in transforming anger is awareness. Most of us are caught by anger without realizing it until it is too late. Mindfulness allows us to notice its first sparks. A tightening in the jaw, a heat rising in the chest, a restless thought repeating, "This is not fair." By naming it, anger is here, we create a pause. That pause is precious. It is the space where choice becomes possible. Without it, anger controls us. With it, we begin to take control. Breath is the anchor in this storm. When anger rises, the breath often becomes fast and shallow. If we consciously slow it deep in, slow out, the fire weakens. The body calms, the mind clears. This is not about suppressing anger, but about cooling it enough to see clearly. Once the fire cools, we can ask, what lies beneath this anger? Often, it is hurt, fear, or sadness. Anger is rarely the root. It is the mask. Beneath the shout of, "How dare you?" is often the whisper of, "I feel unworthy," or "I am afraid." When we see the wound beneath the anger, compassion can enter. There is a story of a monk who was insulted by a villager. The monk remained calm, while others asked how he could endure such words. He replied, "If someone offers you a gift, and you do not accept it, the gift remains with them. Why should I accept his anger?" This story reminds us that we do not have to pick up every fire thrown at us. We can let it fall, unclaimed. Another powerful practice is metta-loving kindness meditation, directed toward those who trigger our anger. At first, this feels impossible. The mind resists. But slowly, repeating phrases such as, "May you be happy," "May you be free from suffering," begins to soften the edges. We remember that even those who hurt us act from their own pain. The driver who cuts us off may be rushing to a hospital. The coworker who insults us may carry burdens unseen. This does not excuse harm, but it transforms hatred into understanding. But what about anger at injustice? Surely not all anger is harmful. Indeed, there is a difference between blind rage and righteous energy. The Buddha did not encourage passivity in the face of harm. He encouraged wise action, free from hatred. Anger clouds judgment, but compassion clarifies it. When we act from compassion rather than rage, we can fight injustice without becoming consumed by bitterness. Martin Luther King Jr. embodied this principle, insisting on love even while resisting oppression. He showed that strength without hatred is possible. Forgiveness again plays a role here. Forgiveness does not mean allowing harm to continue. It means releasing the grip of anger on our own hearts. We may still set boundaries, still speak truth, still walk away from harmful situations. But we do so without carrying poison. Forgiveness is freedom for us, not a favor to the other. In daily life, small practices help. When anger rises, we can take 3 slow breaths before speaking. We can step away for a walk, letting the fire cool before returning. We can keep a phrase ready: "This anger will pass." These are not tricks to avoid conflict, but tools to prevent destruction. They allow us to address problems wisely instead of blindly. Consider a parent facing a rebellious teenager. The teenager shouts, "I hate you." The parent's anger surges. The instinct is to shout back, to assert control. But if the parent breathes, pauses, and sees the fear beneath their anger, the fear of losing connection with their child, they may choose another response. Instead of shouting, they may say, "I hear your pain." This response does not fuel the fire. It begins to cool it. Over time, such choices rebuild trust rather than deepen wounds. Science once again affirms the Buddha's wisdom. Studies show that mindfulness reduces aggressive responses, lowers blood pressure, and strengthens emotional regulation. People who practice compassion report less anger and greater resilience. The ancient teachings align with modern psychology. Anger can be transformed, but only through awareness, compassion, and practice. As we close this first half of our exploration of anger, let us remember, anger itself is not evil. It is a natural human emotion, a signal that something feels wrong. The danger is not the spark, but how we feed it. If we meet it with mindfulness, if we see beneath it, if we transform it with compassion, anger becomes not a destroyer, but a teacher. It shows us our wounds, it points us toward healing, and it invites us to discover strength beyond fire. In the next step, we will go deeper into the second half of anger's journey. We will explore resentment that lingers for years, the way anger can shape entire identities, and the liberation that comes when we release it completely. We will see how forgiveness, patience, and compassion can turn even the hottest fire into light. If sudden outbursts of anger are like wildfires, resentment is like slow-burning coals. It lingers for years, sometimes decades, smoldering beneath the surface. A single betrayal in childhood, a harsh word from a parent, a broken promise from a friend, these can sit in the heart, shaping thoughts and choices long after the event has passed. Resentment becomes part of identity. A person begins to say, "I am the one who was wronged," and carries that story into every relationship. The Buddha taught that holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. Yet many of us drink this poison daily. We replay the story in our minds, keeping the wound alive. Each replay adds fuel to the fire. We convince ourselves that we cannot let go because letting go feels like losing. We believe that by clinging to anger, we hold power. In reality, resentment drains our strength. It consumes energy, steals joy, and blinds us to the present. Forgiveness is the path of release. But forgiveness is often misunderstood. It does not mean forgetting or excusing harm. It does not mean staying in situations where abuse continues. It means choosing freedom over chains. It means saying, "I will no longer carry this fire in my heart." The other person may never change. They may never apologize. But we can still free ourselves. Forgiveness is not for them. It is for us. One way to approach forgiveness is through compassion. Instead of focusing only on the harm done, we look deeper. We ask, what pain must this person carry to have acted this way? This does not excuse their behavior, but it explains it. A parent who neglects may have been neglected themselves. A friend who betrays may be drowning in fear. Seeing their suffering does not erase our hurt, but it softens hatred. We begin to release not because they deserve it, but because we deserve peace. Patience is another key. Anger often demands immediate resolution, but healing takes time. The Buddha compared patience to water, slowly wearing down stone. Each act of patience weakens resentment. Each moment of not feeding the fire allows it to cool. Over months and years, patience transforms even the hardest anger into understanding. Consider a man abandoned by his business partner. He spends years replaying the betrayal, vowing revenge. His health declines, his relationships suffer, his mind grows bitter. One day, through meditation, he begins to see his own suffering clearly. He realizes that his partner's betrayal hurt him once, but his own anger has hurt him thousands of times since. Slowly, he begins to release. He does not trust the partner again, but he no longer allows the betrayal to define his life. This is liberation. Anger also shapes societies. Entire communities carry generational resentment. Wars, prejudices, and injustices are often fueled by ancient wounds never healed. The Buddha's teachings extend here as well. He urged leaders to act with compassion, to see enemies as fellow humans, to resolve conflict through dialogue rather than destruction. Modern history shows that peace is possible when forgiveness enters the collective heart. Nations once at war now trade, cooperate, and build together. It begins with individuals choosing release over revenge. On the personal level, small practices help transform anger day by day. Journaling allows us to release unspoken words without causing harm. Walking meditation channels restless energy into mindful movement. Speaking with a trusted friend or teacher brings perspective, reminding us that we are not alone in our struggle. Above all, returning again and again to the breath grounds us in the present, where anger loses its grip. One of the most powerful antidotes to anger is gratitude. It may seem unrelated, but gratitude shifts focus from what was taken to what remains. When anger says, "Look at how I was wronged," gratitude replies, "Look at what I still have. The warmth of the sun, the kindness of a stranger, the breath in this moment. These are treasures untouched by anger." By practicing gratitude, we water seeds of peace. Slowly, anger fades in the presence of appreciation. The Buddha himself faced hostility. People mocked him, doubted him, even tried to harm him. Yet he responded with calm and compassion. He once said, "Hatred is never ended by hatred, but only by love." This is the eternal law. This teaching is both simple and radical. It invites us to break cycles that have lasted generations. It invites us to transform anger not by feeding it, but by choosing love. This does not mean we never feel anger again. It means we relate to it differently. Instead of being consumed, we observe. Instead of clinging, we release. Instead of hating, we choose compassion. Anger becomes a signal rather than a master. It shows us where healing is needed, where boundaries must be set, where wounds remain tender. In this way, anger becomes a teacher dot as we close this chapter. Let us carry this image. Anger as fire. Left unchecked, it burns and destroys. But with mindfulness, compassion, patience, and forgiveness, the fire is transformed. It becomes light and warmth. It becomes energy for justice, courage, and truth. We do not fear anger, nor do we feed it. We meet it with wisdom, and in doing so, we discover freedom. And now, having walked through the flames of anger, we turn to another subtle but powerful burden: attachment. While anger burns hot and obvious, attachment hides quietly in the background, whispering promises of happiness if only we can hold tightly enough. Yet like anger, attachment too leads to suffering. In the next chapter, we will explore how clinging to possessions, people, and identities binds us, and how letting go opens the door to true freedom. Attachment often hides behind the face of love ambition, or loyalty. On the surface, it looks harmless, even noble. A parent clings to their child's future, saying, "I only want what is best." A worker clings to their job, saying, "I must protect my family." A lover clings to their partner, saying, "I cannot live without you." Yet beneath these words lies a quiet chain. Attachment binds us to outcomes, to people, to possessions. And when reality shifts, as it always does, the chain tightens and we suffer. The Buddha taught that attachment is one of the root causes of dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness of life. Why? Because everything we cling to is impermanent. Bodies age. Relationships change. Jobs end. Fortunes rise and fall. When we insist on holding tightly, we set ourselves against the nature of reality. It is like gripping a handful of sand. The harder we squeeze, the faster it slips through our fingers. Consider the story of a man who worked tirelessly to build wealth. He told himself it was for his children, for security. But deep down, he clung to the identity of being successful. When the market crashed, his fortune disappeared. So too did his sense of self. He felt empty, worthless, defeated. What caused his suffering? Not the loss of money alone, but the attachment to an identity built upon it. Without that identity, he felt he no longer existed. This is the subtle danger of attachment. It convinces us that happiness depends on conditions outside us. We say, "I will be happy when I achieve this. I will be at peace when I have that." But conditions are never stable. When they shift, our happiness collapses. True freedom, the Buddha taught, comes not from controlling conditions, but from letting go of clinging to them. Letting go does not mean indifference. It does not mean abandoning responsibility or refusing to care. It means caring deeply without clinging. It means loving fully without trying to possess. It means working diligently without attaching our entire identity to results. This is the middle path, neither grasping nor rejecting, but walking with balance. A mother, for example, can love her child with all her heart. But if she clings, insisting the child must fulfill her dreams, must behave exactly as she imagines, then both suffer. The child feels trapped, the mother feels frustrated. But if she lets go loving without possession, guiding without control, then love flows freely. She still cares, still supports, but without chains. This is the difference between attachment and true love. Mindfulness reveals our attachments. When disappointment arises, we can ask, what was I clinging to? A certain outcome? A certain response? A certain image of myself? By identifying the attachment, we begin to loosen it. Each time we let go, even a little, the heart grows lighter. One practice the Buddha taught is reflection on impermanence. By contemplating that all things change, we prepare the heart to release. We look at a flower and remember it will wither. We look at a loved one and remember they will age. Far from making us cold, this makes us cherish them more. Knowing that nothing lasts, we savor the moment. We stop demanding permanence and begin to celebrate presence. Asterisk another powerful practice is generosity. When we give freely, we train the heart to release. Each gift is a small act of letting go. Over time, generosity weakens the grip of attachment. We discover joy in sharing, freedom in releasing. A child who gives away their favorite toy learns that love increases, not decreases, when shared. An adult who donates time or resources learns the same. In giving, we loosen chains, but attachment is not only to external things. We also cling to our own ideas, opinions, and identities. We say, "This is who I am. This is what I believe. This is how things must be." When others challenge us, anger rises. When life shifts, fear arises. Our identity feels threatened. Yet the Buddha taught that the self we cling to is not solid. It is a collection of ever-changing processes: body, feelings, thoughts, consciousness. To cling to it as permanent is like clinging to a flame, believing it never changes as it burns. When we loosen attachment to identity, humility grows. We no longer need to defend every opinion. We no longer fear change as loss of self. We see ourselves as part of a greater flow, interconnected with all life. This does not erase individuality, but it removes the chains of rigid identity. We become freer, more flexible, more compassionate. Consider a man who clings to being strong. He refuses to show emotion, refuses to ask for help. But when illness comes, his attachment becomes prison. He feels shame and vulnerability. Yet if he lets go, accepting that strength can include tenderness, he discovers new freedom. His relationships deepen, his suffering lessens. By releasing identity, he gains life. As we close this first half of our exploration of attachment, let us hold this truth. Clinging is the root of suffering, but letting go is the doorway to freedom. Letting go does not diminish love. It purifies it. Letting go does not erase responsibility. It balances it. Letting go does not make us empty. It makes us whole. In the next step, we will look deeper. We will explore attachment in relationships, the illusion of control, and the fear of loss. We will see how letting go transforms grief into gratitude, desire into generosity, and fear into peace. Attachment shows itself most clearly in our relationships. We often confuse love with possession. We say, "You are mine," believing that closeness means ownership. We demand that our partner act a certain way, speak a certain way, stay by our side forever. When they change, as all people do, our hearts break, not only because of the loss, but because of the shattering of our illusion of control. Buddha reminded us that people are not objects. They are beings on their own paths, shaped by their own karma, carrying their own joys and sorrows. To cling to them as possessions is to deny their freedom, and in doing so, we lose our own. True love does not say, "Stay with me forever." True love says, "I wish for your happiness, wherever your path leads." This love is not weaker than attachment. It is stronger. It is not fragile, dependent on conditions. It is resilient, able to endure change, distance, even death. Consider the story of a woman who adored her husband. When he died unexpectedly, her grief was overwhelming. She clung to memories, to possessions, to the dream of what might have been. Each night she wept, unable to move forward. Then she encountered the teaching of impermanence. Slowly, she began to see that her husband's life, like all lives, was temporary. She realized that her love for him was real, but clinging to his absence was destroying her. She began to release not her love, but her attachment. In releasing, she found space to honor his memory with gratitude instead of despair. Attachment also arises in our desire for control. We want certainty, that life will unfold according to our plans, that others will behave as we expect, that our efforts will always succeed. But life refuses to obey. Plans collapse, people surprise us, outcomes twist in unexpected directions. When control slips away, frustration and fear take hold. This is the suffering of attachment. The practice of letting go is the practice of trust. Not blind trust that everything will be easy, but wise trust that we can meet whatever arises. It is the trust that the present moment contains what we need. When we release control, we do not become passive. We still act, still choose, still plan, but we hold outcomes lightly. We give our best without chaining our peace to the result. This is the balance the Buddha called the middle way. Fear of loss often fuels attachment. We cling because we dread the pain of letting go. But ironically, clinging makes loss even harder. When we hold tightly, every change feels like death. When we hold lightly, change still hurts, but it does not destroy us. Think of holding a bird in your hand. If you grip too tightly, you harm the bird. If you open your hand, the bird may fly away, but the memory of its song remains. Letting go allows us to love without destroying what we love. Generosity is the daily training ground for this truth. Each time we give, whether money, time, or kindness, we practice releasing. We prove to ourselves that joy does not come from hoarding, but from sharing. A child who gives away part of their candy discovers delight in the smile of a friend. An adult who donates to a cause discovers freedom in knowing they are not ruled by greed. Each act of generosity weakens the chains of attachment and strengthens the muscles of freedom. Another powerful tool is meditation on death. Though it may sound grim, it is liberating. By remembering that everything, including ourselves, will pass, we stop clinging so desperately. We begin to cherish moments as they are, instead of demanding they last forever. A cup of tea becomes precious, not because it will last, but because it will not. A hug becomes sacred not because it will never end, but because it must. Impermanence transforms ordinary moments into treasures. The Buddha's own life illustrates this. After his enlightenment, he still faced loss. Beloved disciples died, communities fractured, enemies attacked. Yet he remained calm, not because he was cold, but because he understood impermanence. He loved deeply, but he did not cling. His compassion flowed without chains. His wisdom remained steady. His peace unshaken. Modern life offers many opportunities to practice. When a job ends, we can grieve but also ask, what door now opens? When a relationship shifts, we can mourn but also say, may you be happy, even without me. When a possession breaks, we can sigh but also smile. It served its purpose. Each act of letting go trains the heart to trust life's flow. Letting go does not mean losing everything. It means losing the chains that bind us. We still love, still work, still care. But we do so freely, without fear. We become like a tree in the wind-rooted, yet flexible. The branches bend, the leaves fall, but the tree remains. As we close this chapter on attachment, let us hold this reflection. Happiness is not found in clinging, but in freedom. We suffer not because things change, but because we demand that they do not. When we loosen our grip, life does not become empty, it becomes full of presence, gratitude, and peace. And now, having faced the chains of attachment, we turn to another struggle of modern life, uncertainty. In a world of constant change, people long for stability, yet the ground beneath them always shifts. Anxiety about the unknown keeps countless hearts restless. But the Buddha's teachings shine here as well, showing us how to live with courage in the face of uncertainty, and how to find peace in the very groundlessness of life. Uncertainty is the air of modern life. Jobs that once seemed secure vanish overnight. Markets rise and fall without warning. Health, no matter how carefully guarded, shifts with a single diagnosis. Relationships that feel unshakable can change with one conversation. The mind longs for solid ground, for guarantees, for a clear path ahead. But the truth, as the Buddha taught, is that life offers no such promises. Everything is uncertain, and the attempt to escape this reality is a great source of suffering. We often imagine that if we plan carefully enough, work hard enough, or control tightly enough, we can build a life immune to uncertainty. We buy insurance, lock doors, save money, make rules, track health, schedule every moment. These acts are not wrong. They provide relative safety. But beneath them still beats the truth. No plan can prevent impermanence. No wall can keep change away forever. This truth frightens many, and so they live in constant anxiety, waiting for the ground to collapse. But what if uncertainty is not the enemy? What if uncertainty is the very fabric of life, the source of possibility, the doorway to freedom? This is the radical shift the Buddha offered. He did not deny that impermanence brings pain, but he showed that clinging to certainty brings even more. By opening to uncertainty, we learn to live fully in the present, to adapt with flexibility, and to trust that peace does not depend on control. Imagine standing on the shore, watching waves crash. If you demand the ocean remain still, you suffer endlessly. If you accept the movement, you begin to marvel at the rhythm, the beauty, the power. Life is this ocean. It will never be still. But if we learn to float, to swim, to ride the waves, then uncertainty becomes not terror, but adventure. Mindfulness is the first practice for meeting uncertainty. The anxious mind races into the future, demanding answers to questions that cannot yet be answered. Will I be okay? Will I succeed? Will I be loved? Mindfulness calls us back. It says, breathe. Notice this moment. You are safe now. Each breath grounds us in the only certainty that exists, the present. The more we practice, the more we see that the present moment is always enough. Another practice is learning to release the demand for guarantees. We often ask life to promise us outcomes. If I try, I must succeed. If I love, they must stay. If I work hard, I must be rewarded. But life does not operate on contracts. The Buddha taught that all things arise and pass away due to causes and conditions. When we accept this, we stop demanding permanence and start working wisely with what is here. We plant seeds, nurture them, and trust that some will grow. Even if not all do. Courage grows when we face uncertainty directly. Instead of shrinking, we can say, yes, the future is unknown, but I will meet it as it comes. This courage is not reckless. It is steady. It does not pretend to know what tomorrow brings, but it trusts our ability to walk through tomorrow when it arrives. It is the strength of a traveler who cannot see the entire path, but takes the next step with confidence. There is a story of a monk who lived in the forest. Each night, he wondered if wild animals would attack, if storms would destroy his shelter, if illness would strike. Fear haunted him. One day, his teacher asked, "What is certain?" The monk replied, "Nothing." The teacher smiled and said, "Then befriend the uncertainty." That night, instead of resisting, the monk whispered, "Yes, the night is uncertain." To his surprise, the fear softened. He realized that uncertainty was not a threat, but simply the nature of life. From then on, he lived with peace, even as storms and dangers came. Modern examples echo this. A worker laid off after decades discovers new purpose in a different career. A patient facing illness learns to savor each day more deeply than before. A couple whose plans collapse find joy in unexpected adventures. None of this erases the pain of uncertainty, but it reveals its hidden gift, freedom from rigid expectations. Another way to soften the fear of uncertainty is through gratitude. When the future feels shaky, the mind often forgets what is present. Gratitude brings us back. We look at the small certainties, the warmth of sunlight on the skin, the taste of food, the kindness of a friend. These anchor us. They remind us that while the future is unknown, the present is filled with gifts. Gratitude transforms uncertainty from emptiness into richness, but uncertainty also brings grief. Plans collapse. Loved ones leave. Health declines. In these moments, we cannot simply smile and say, "All is well." The Buddha did not ask us to deny pain. He asked us to meet it with compassion. When the unknown brings loss, we grieve fully. We cry, we ache. We honor what was. Yet even here, compassion reminds us, this too is part of life. And as we breathe through grief, we discover that even in loss, life continues. The sun rises, the heart beats. Kindness is possible. As we close this first half of our journey into uncertainty, let us carry this truth. Life offers no guarantees, but it offers infinite possibilities. When we cling to certainty, we suffer. When we open to uncertainty, we awaken. The unknown is not a void to fear, but a field of potential, a canvas waiting for each step, each breath, each act of love. In the next step, we will go deeper still. We will explore how uncertainty reveals the illusion of control, how trust grows when we release our grip, and how living with groundlessness can bring not fear, but profound freedom. The fear of uncertainty often comes from the illusion of control. We convince ourselves that if we plan carefully enough, if we work tirelessly, if we watch every detail, we can control the future. We imagine that control will protect us from loss, disappointment, and pain. Yet time and again, life shows otherwise. Illness arrives despite healthy habits. Accidents happen despite precautions. Loved ones change despite promises. The future does not bend to our will, no matter how hard we grip. The Buddha called this grasping a refusal to accept the nature of impermanence. We grasp because we are afraid, but grasping does not prevent change. It only magnifies suffering when change arrives. To let go of control is not to become careless. It is to become wise. It is to act diligently in the present while releasing the demand that the future obey us. It is to recognize that we are part of a vast web of conditions, far beyond our power to manage. Trust begins to grow when we release this illusion. Not blind trust that everything will turn out as we wish, but deeper trust that whatever arises, we can meet it. Trust that life itself will carry us, as the river carries the boat. This trust does not come overnight. It comes through practice each breath, reminding us that we are alive now. Each act of mindfulness teaching us that we can endure uncertainty with steadiness. There is a practice called grounding in groundlessness. It sounds paradoxical, yet it captures the essence of the path. Instead of searching for unshakable ground, we learn to rest in the ever-changing flow. We breathe, we notice, we accept that the ground shifts, and we discover that the shifting itself can be home. The Buddha compared this to standing in a storm. At first, we fight the wind, trying to stop it. But when we spread our arms and allow it, we find we can remain upright. The wind is no longer enemy. It is simply part of life. Stories of transformation reveal this again and again. A woman whose marriage ends discovers the freedom to pursue passions long ignored. A man whose company closes finds joy in spending more time with family. These shifts do not erase the pain of loss, but they show the possibility hidden within uncertainty. Each ending carries the seed of a new beginning. Each collapse opens space for something unexpected. Buddhist teachings encourage us to embrace uncertainty, not only in personal life, but also in how we view the world. Politics shift, economies fluctuate, societies evolve. When we cling to certainty about how things must be, we despair at every change. But when we practice equanimity, we respond with steadiness. We work for justice and compassion, but without attaching to fixed outcomes. This allows us to act wisely without being broken by results beyond our control. Meditation on death deepens this acceptance. Nothing brings more uncertainty than the fact of our own mortality. We do not know when or how death will come. Most avoid this thought, clinging to denial. But the Buddha encouraged reflection on death as a way to awaken. By remembering that our time is limited, we loosen the grip of trivial worries. We live more fully in each day. Death's uncertainty becomes a reminder to cherish life. One practice is to sit quietly and whisper, "This breath may be my last." At first, the words bring fear, but slowly they bring clarity. We begin to see that every breath is a gift, every moment precious. Uncertainty about death no longer terrifies. It deepens gratitude. We realize that while we cannot control the length of life, we can choose the depth of presence. Generosity again serves as training. To give is to embrace uncertainty. We release resources without knowing what will return. Yet again and again, giving proves that life supports us when we support others. A person who shares food may not know when the next meal will come, but often discovers unexpected kindness in return. Each act of generosity strengthens trust in life's flow. Community also helps us live with uncertainty. Alone, the unknown feels vast and terrifying. But when we walk with others, sharing fears and hopes, uncertainty becomes lighter. The Sangha spiritual community reminds us that while none of us can control the future, we can support one another through it. Together, we learn to meet groundlessness with courage. At the heart of this practice is acceptance. Not passive resignation, but active presence. Acceptance says, yes, life is uncertain, and I will meet it fully. In acceptance, we stop wasting energy fighting reality. We redirect that energy into love, service, and presence. We discover that the unknown, once feared, is also the source of wonder. Without uncertainty, there would be no surprise, no discovery, no growth. As we close this chapter, let us hold this image. Life has a vast sky. Uncertainty is the shifting weather storms, winds, clouds. We cannot control it. But beneath it all, the sky remains open, spacious, free. Our awareness is this sky. When we rest in it, we are no longer crushed by change. We see uncertainty not as threat, but as natural movement. In this recognition lies peace. And now, having faced the shifting ground of uncertainty, we turn to another weight of modern life, overthinking. In a world of constant noise and endless choice, the mind often spins without rest. Thoughts race, doubts multiply, decisions feel impossible. Overthinking steals our peace as surely as any external storm. In the next chapter, we will explore how the Buddha's teachings guide us to quiet the mind, to trust simplicity, and to discover clarity beyond thought. The modern mind is rarely quiet. Thoughts race from the moment we wake until the moment we collapse into bed, and even then, many toss and turn, their minds unable to stop spinning. Overthinking has become one of the great struggles of our time. It hides beneath labels like planning, analyzing, or problem solving, but often it is not wisdom at work. It is worry in disguise. The mind replays conversations, imagines disasters, calculates endless outcomes. Instead of bringing clarity, this constant thinking clouds perception, leaving us exhausted and uncertain. Overthinking is fueled by the illusion that if we think long enough, we can prevent mistakes, avoid pain, or guarantee success. But the truth is that no amount of mental rehearsal can control the future. We might plan carefully, yet accidents still happen. We might analyze endlessly, yet outcomes still surprise us. Instead of preventing suffering, overthinking creates more. It steals presence, drains joy, and fills even simple moments with doubt. Asterisk, consider an example familiar to many, sending an email at work. Hours may pass as we draft, edit, re-edit, fearing each word will be judged. Even after sending, we replay it in our minds. Did I sound foolish? Should I have written differently? What began as a simple task becomes a source of suffering. Or imagine someone preparing for a first date. Instead of looking forward with openness, they obsess over what to say, what to wear, what to avoid. By the time they arrive, they are so tangled in their thoughts, they cannot simply be themselves. The Buddha recognized this restless nature of the mind. He called it papanka, the tendency of the mind to proliferate thoughts, spinning stories far beyond reality. A single event triggers endless narratives. A friend fails to call, and suddenly we imagine rejection, betrayal, abandonment. A stranger looks at us oddly, and we construct entire stories about judgment and dislike. Papanka is the mind's habit of turning a seed into a forest, a ripple into a storm. Mindfulness is the first medicine. When we notice the mind spinning, we pause and label it, thinking. This simple note creates space. Instead of being lost in thought, we observe thought as a process. We see that thoughts rise and fall like waves, each appearing, cresting, and dissolving. By observing, we stop feeding them. Over time, the storm quiets. The mind may still think, but we no longer drown in it. The breath again becomes an anchor. Each inhale and exhale draws us back from the maze of thoughts into the body, into the present. Overthinking thrives in past and future, rehashing what was, fearing what may come. The breath anchors us in now, the only place where peace lives. Another practice is to simplify decisions. Overthinking often arises when we face too many choices. We fear making the wrong one, so we analyze endlessly. The Buddha encouraged simplicity. Instead of asking, which choice guarantees happiness? We ask, which choice aligns with compassion, wisdom, and non-harm? When guided by values rather than fear, decisions become clearer. We may not control outcomes, but we can act with integrity in the present. Consider the parable of the farmer and his horse. The farmer's horse ran away. Neighbors said, "How unlucky." The farmer replied, "Maybe." Days later, the horse returned with more horses. The neighbors said, "How lucky." Again, the farmer replied, "Maybe." Then the farmer's son broke his leg while riding one of the new horses. The neighbors said, "How unlucky." Again, "Maybe." Soon after, the army came to recruit young men for war, but spared the son because of his injury. Each event seemed good or bad, yet the truth was uncertain. The farmer's wisdom was in not overthinking, not rushing to judgment, but meeting each event as it came. This story reminds us that overthinking often comes from labeling everything as good or bad, success or failure. But life is more complex. What seems terrible today may lead to blessings tomorrow. What seems wonderful today may lead to challenges tomorrow. When we stop overthinking, we open to this mystery. We learn to trust the unfolding rather than demanding certainty. Overthinking also thrives on self-criticism. The mind replays mistakes, condemns us with harsh words, imagines everyone's judgment. Buddhism offers metta-loving-kindness- as an antidote. When self-criticism arises, we respond with kindness. May I be at ease? May I forgive myself? May I begin again? This softens the mind's harsh loops. Instead of spiraling deeper, we pause, forgive, and move forward. Technology adds fuel to overthinking. Constant notifications, endless news, and social media comparisons keep the mind spinning. We scroll at midnight, unable to stop, each image sparking stories. They are happier. They are more successful. I am behind. The Buddha might call this modern papanka, the multiplication of thoughts by external stimulation. The antidote is mindful consumption. We choose when to check devices, limit exposure, and balance screen time with silence. In silence, the mind rests. Community also supports us here. Alone, we may overthink endlessly, but when we share with trusted friends or spiritual companions, perspective returns. We hear another voice say, "You are not alone. Your fears are not reality." Their presence pulls us from the spiral. This is the gift of Sangha. Not only meditation together, but also reminding each other of what is true. As we close this first half of our exploration of overthinking, let us remember, thinking itself is not the enemy. Wise thought, guided by compassion and clarity, is essential. The problem is when thinking becomes endless, tangled, disconnected from reality. Then it steals our peace. The Buddha's path invites us to meet thought with awareness, to pause, to simplify, to soften. In doing so, we discover clarity not in endless analysis, But in presence, not in the next step, we will dive deeper. We will explore how overthinking affects relationships, how it feeds anxiety and regret, and how silence and mindfulness create space for wisdom to arise naturally. We will see that the greatest clarity often comes not from more thought, but from stillness. Overthinking does not only torment us in solitude, it seeps into our relationships, twisting words, magnifying small slights, and planting seeds of doubt. A friend delays responding to a message, and suddenly the mind spins. Did I offend them? Are they pulling away? Do they dislike me now? A partner grows quiet, and the mind invents entire stories of betrayal or rejection. None of these thoughts are based on truth, but the overthinking mind treats them as reality. Before long, relationships strain not because of actual events, but because of imagined ones. The Buddhist teachings on right view and right speech offer guidance here. Right view reminds us to see things as they are, not as our fears paint them. Instead of assuming motives, we pause and observe. They have not replied. That is all I know. Right speech encourages us to communicate openly rather than drowning in silent speculation. A simple, honest question, "Are you okay?" can dissolve weeks of anxious stories. Overthinking thrives in silence. It weakens when replaced with truth. Overthinking also feeds regret about the past. We replay mistakes endlessly, the argument we mishandled, the opportunity we missed, the words we wish we had spoken differently. But no amount of mental rehearsal changes what has already happened. The Buddha compared this to carrying a heavy sack long after we have reached our destination. The past is done, yet we keep lifting its weight. Mindfulness invites us to set it down. We acknowledge the past, learn from it, and then release it. Each breath is a chance to begin again. Silence is a powerful medicine for overthinking. In silence, we discover that thoughts are not endless rivers, but passing clouds. When we sit quietly, focusing on the breath, the mind at first races more fiercely. But with patience, space opens. We begin to see the gap between thoughts, moments of stillness. In these gaps, peace resides. The more we practice, the more we realize that clarity often comes not from thinking harder, but from thinking less. Consider an artist struggling with a decision about a project. They analyze endlessly, scribbling lists of pros and cons, unable to choose. Frustrated, they step away, take a walk in silence. Suddenly, the answer comes not from more analysis, but from the quiet space in which wisdom could arise. This is the gift of stillness. It allows deeper knowing to emerge. The Buddha often retreated into silence for days, even weeks. He understood that wisdom is not forced. Like a pond, the mind becomes clear when undisturbed. Overthinking is like stirring the water constantly, making it muddy. Silence is letting the water settle. Clarity that appears naturally. Compassion also softens overthinking. Many of us criticize ourselves for being unable to stop thinking. Why can't I relax? What's wrong with me? This judgment adds another layer of suffering. Compassion invites us to smile gently at the restless mind. Ah, here it goes again. Instead of battling it, we observe kindly. Over time, this gentle awareness reduces the mind's frantic energy. Another practice is deliberate presence in simple tasks. Washing dishes, walking, eating, each can become meditation. When we bring full attention to one activity, the mind stops spinning in 10 directions. We feel the water on our hands, the steps beneath our feet, the taste on our tongue. These small moments of presence retrain the mind, showing it that peace lies in doing one thing fully, not in juggling endless thoughts. Community helps here too. Overthinking often tells us, "You are alone in this." But when we share openly, we discover that others also battle restless minds. Together, we practice sitting, breathing, listening. The Sangha becomes a mirror, reminding us that overthinking is not a personal flaw, but a human condition. Together, we learn to quiet the noise. Technology can also be used wisely to support this practice. While it often fuels overthinking, it can also provide tools-guided meditations, reminders to pause, communities that encourage mindfulness. The key is intention. Do we use technology to distract or to return to presence? With awareness, even the tools of modern life can aid the ancient practice of calming the mind down as we close this chapter. Let us hold this reflection. Thinking is a tool, not a master. When used wisely, it builds, creates, solves. When left unchecked, it enslaves us in endless loops. The Buddha did not ask us to abandon thought, but to use it with awareness, to think when needed and to rest when not, to trust silence as much as analysis, to discover that clarity arises not from overthinking, but from presence. And now, having quieted the storm of the restless mind, we come to our final great challenge, fear itself. Fear underlies much of what we have explored: stress, anxiety, attachment, overthinking. It is the shadow that follows us through life. But in the next chapter, we will face fear directly. We will see how the Buddha's teachings transform fear from a prison into a doorway, from an enemy into a guide toward liberation. Fear is the shadow beneath nearly every form of suffering. Stress is often fear of failure. Anxiety is fear of the unknown. Anger is fear disguised as power. Attachment is fear of loss. Overthinking is fear of making mistakes. Fear hides in countless shapes, but at its core, it is always the same: the trembling of the heart before impermanence. We fear losing what we love, facing what we resist, becoming what we cannot accept. Fear begins early. A child fears the dark, the thunder, the absence of a parent. An adult fears rejection, poverty, illness, death. These fears change shape but rarely vanish. They follow us through life, whispering at night, tightening the chest, freezing the body. In modern life, fear is amplified by constant news of disaster, images of violence, endless warnings. The mind absorbs danger at every turn, and even when we are safe, fear lingers as if preparing for the next blow. The Buddha understood fear deeply. He himself faced it in forests filled with wild animals, in the silence of nights alone. He described the way fear arises: a sound in the leaves, a rustle in the dark, and suddenly the mind spins. Is it danger? Is it death? He realized that fear is often more about imagination than reality. The mind creates stories that frighten us more than the truth itself. The first step to transform fear is to face it directly. Instead of fleeing, we pause. We breathe. We say, "Fear is here." This naming creates space. Instead of being swallowed, we observe. Instead of collapsing, we stay upright. The Buddha encouraged this again and again, to meet fear with mindfulness. Each time we face fear directly, its power weakens. Consider the practice of mindful breathing during fear. The body trembles, the heart races, the breath shortens. Instead of resisting, we bring attention gently to the breath. Each inhale says, "I am here." Each exhale says, "I release." Slowly, the body calms. The fear may not vanish, but it no longer controls us. Another practice is to contemplate impermanence. Fear thrives on the illusion that things must remain as they are. We fear death because we cling to life as permanent. We fear loss because we cling to possessions and people as unchanging. By remembering that all things are impermanent, we begin to soften fear. This does not erase the ache, but it gives perspective. Death is not failure. It is part of life. Loss is not punishment. It is the nature of change. Impermanence, once feared, becomes teacher. Fear often grows from resistance. We tell ourselves, "I cannot handle this. I must avoid it at all costs." Yet when challenges come, we often discover strength we did not know we had. The Buddha reminded us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to meet it. A soldier may still tremble before battle. A parent may still fear for a child. Courage is choosing to act with wisdom despite the trembling. There is a story of a monk meditating in a forest haunted by fear. Each night, the sound of animals filled him with terror. One night, instead of fleeing, he sat firmly and said, "Fear, I see you. If you must consume me, do so, but I will not run." In that moment, the fear dissolved. It had no power over one who refused to flee. This story reminds us that fear is often a phantom strong. Only when we run, weak. When we face it, compassion also heals fear. Much of our fear is self-centered. Fear for me and mine. By widening the circle of concern, fear loosens. When we focus on serving others, fear takes a back seat. A firefighter rushing into flames does not think of fear. They think of saving lives. A parent protecting a child acts not from fear, but from love. Compassion transforms fear into courage. But fear is not only personal. Collective fear shapes societies. Fear of outsiders fuels prejudice. Fear of change fuels conflict. The Buddha taught that peace cannot come from fear-driven action. Only compassion dissolves fear. When we see others not as threats, but as fellow humans seeking safety and happiness, fear diminishes. Hatred fades. Bridges formed in daily life. We can practice fearlessness in small ways. Speaking truth kindly when silence feels safer. Trying something new despite the risk of failure. Sitting quietly with uncomfortable feelings instead of distracting ourselves. Each small act builds the muscle of courage. Each time we choose presence over avoidance, fear loses ground. Yet it is important to remember, fear itself is not evil. It is part of the human condition. It evolved to protect us from danger. The problem arises when fear oversteps, when it dominates even safe moments, when it dictates our lives. The goal is not to eradicate fear, but to see it clearly, to meet it wisely, to prevent it from ruling us. As we close this first half of our exploration into fear, let us hold this truth. Fear may always whisper, but it does not have to command. We can meet it with breath, with mindfulness, with compassion. We can transform it from master into messenger. It warns us of impermanence, but it also points us toward freedom. By facing fear directly, we discover the unshakable peace that lies beyond it. In the next step, we will go deeper. We will explore fear of death, fear of failure, and fear of not being enough. We will see how the Buddha's teachings reveal freedom, not by denying fear, but by walking through it with open eyes and steady heart. Among all fears, none is more universal than the fear of death. It hides beneath countless anxieties, the fear of illness, of aging, of loss. Even when we do not name it, death lingers as the final shadow. Many spend life trying to escape it, ignoring it, distracting from it, pretending it belongs only to others. Yet the Buddha taught that to live fully, we must face death directly. Not with morbid obsession, but with honest awareness. For when we accept death, fear loses its deepest root. The Buddha encouraged contemplation of death as a daily practice. He reminded disciples, of all footprints, the elephant's is supreme. Of all meditations, mindfulness of death is supreme. Why? Because remembering death sharpens our awareness of life. When we realize that this breath may be our last, we stop wasting time on trivial worries. We cherish each moment, each connection, each act of kindness. Death's certainty and timing's uncertainty teach us to live now. Imagine a person diagnosed with a terminal illness. At first, fear consumes them. But as they face mortality, something shifts. They begin to savor mornings, to notice small beauties, to forgive old grudges. What once felt urgent money, status, opinion fades. What remains is love, presence, gratitude. This is the gift hidden within the fear of death, the reminder to live fully while we can. Fear of failure is another prison. It stops people from trying new paths, from speaking truth, from pursuing dreams. The mind whispers, "If I fail, I will be worthless." Yet the Buddha taught that our worth is not tied to success or failure. Our value lies in our capacity for awareness, compassion, and effort. Failure is simply one result among many, shaped by causes and conditions. It does not define who we are. Consider a farmer who plants seeds. Some sprout, others do not. Does the failure of certain seeds mean the farmer is worthless? No, it means the soil, weather, and timing were not aligned. So too in life, our efforts may not always bring desired results, but they always teach us. When we see failure as teacher, not enemy, fear loosens. We act with courage, knowing that success is not guaranteed, but growth is. Perhaps the most painful fear is the fear of not being enough. It whispers in countless ways, "I am not smart enough, not attractive enough, not strong enough, not lovable enough." This fear drives endless striving, endless masks, endless exhaustion. Yet the Buddha's teachings offer liberation here too. He taught that each being already possesses Buddha nature, the potential for awakening, the seed of compassion and wisdom. Our worth is not earned by achievements or appearances. It is inherent in our very being. When we sit quietly in meditation, breathing, noticing, we begin to taste this truth. Beneath all striving, beneath all self-criticism, there is simply awareness, open, clear, present. In that awareness, we are enough. Not because we meet society's standards, but because we are alive, conscious, capable of love. This realization dissolves the fear of inadequacy. It reveals that our deepest nature was never lacking. The path to freedom from fear is not quick. Fear returns again and again. But each time we meet it with awareness, it weakens. Each time we breathe with it, instead of fleeing, it loses power. Each time we act with compassion, despite trembling, courage grows. Slowly, fear becomes not a master, but a companion, a reminder of impermanence, a teacher of courage, a doorway to deeper wisdom. There is a story of the Buddha meeting a murderer named Angulimala. People feared him deeply, but the Buddha approached without anger or fear. He saw the humanity in the man, the possibility of transformation. Through compassion, Angulimala renounced violence and became a monk. This story reminds us that even in the face of great fear, love and wisdom can prevail. Fear may rise, but it does not have to rule us. As we close this chapter, let us hold this reflection. Fear will always whisper. It is part of being human, but we are not its slaves. We can meet it with breath, with mindfulness, with compassion. We can face death with gratitude, failure with courage, inadequacy with acceptance. In doing so, fear becomes not a cage, but a teacher. It shows us where we cling, and in releasing, we discover freedom. And now, as we complete our journey through 10 great struggles of human life stress, money, relationships, anxiety, loneliness, anger, attachment, uncertainty, overthinking, and fear, we turn to the closing reflection. In this conclusion, we will gather the threads, remind ourselves of the path, and plant seeds of hope. For the Buddha's message is not one of despair, but of liberation. Suffering is real, but so too is freedom. We have traveled a long road together through 10 great struggles that shape human life. We began with stress, that constant pressure of modern living, and discovered that breath and presence can loosen its grip. We faced money's promises and burdens, and learned that true wealth is found not in possessions, but in generosity and freedom from craving. We entered the tangled world of relationships, where love often mixes with pain, and saw how compassion, patience, and deep listening transform connection. We sat with anxiety, that restless whisper of the future, and discovered the calm of equanimity and acceptance. We walked through loneliness, that quiet ache of the heart, and remembered that connection begins within, expanding outward in kindness and community. We stood in the fire of anger and learned how awareness, patience, and forgiveness can turn fire into light. We examined attachment, the chains of clinging, and saw how letting go purifies love and brings true freedom. We faced uncertainty, the shifting ground of life, and found that groundlessness itself can be a place of trust. We explored overthinking, the restless spin of the mind, and discovered that clarity often comes in silence, not in endless analysis. Finally, we looked at fear itself, the shadow beneath them all, and saw how courage, compassion, and mindfulness transform fear into teacher. Through each of these journeys, one truth has repeated itself. Suffering is real, but suffering is not the end. The Buddha's message is clear. There is a way through. We need not be crushed by stress, enslaved by money, broken by relationships, consumed by anxiety, drowned in loneliness, earned by anger, bound by attachment, shaken by uncertainty, tangled in overthinking, or ruled by fear. These experiences are part of life, but they are not prisons. They can become doorways if we walk them with awareness. The path is not about perfection. It is not about never feeling stress or fear again. It is about meeting them differently. It is about pausing when stress arises, breathing when anxiety shakes us, forgiving when anger flares, letting go when attachment tightens. It is about choosing presence over panic, compassion over judgment, generosity over greed, trust over control. Each small act matters. Each moment of awareness plants a seed of freedom. Imagine your life as a garden. Stress, anger, fear, they are weeds that can choke the soil if left unchecked. But with mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, we plant new seeds: peace, patience, kindness, trust. Over time, these grow stronger. The weeds may still appear, but they no longer dominate. The garden becomes a place of beauty, resilience, and life. You do not need to walk this path alone. The Buddha always emphasized Sangha community. Find those who also walk the way of awareness. Share your struggles and victories. Sit together in silence. Encourage one another. Healing is lighter when carried together. Even a single moment of shared breath, a single act of kindness exchanged, reminds us that we belong. And remember, practice begins small. Do not demand transformation overnight. Begin with one breath, one act of generosity, one moment of listening, one pause before speaking in anger. These small steps ripple outward. Just as a pebble dropped in water creates widening circles, so too your practice touches those around you. Your calm steadies your family. Your kindness softens your workplace. Your compassion strengthens your community. The Buddha did not promise a life free from storms. He promised that we could become steady in the storm. He promised that suffering, though real, can be understood, transformed, and released. He promised that liberation is possible for all, not just for monks or mystics, but for anyone willing to walk the path of mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. So let us close with hope. If you feel weighed down by stress, know that peace is possible. If you feel trapped by money's chase, know that freedom is near. If you feel broken in love, know that compassion heals. If anxiety keeps you restless, know that calm awaits within. If loneliness aches, know that connection begins with you. If anger burns, know that forgiveness can cool. If attachment binds, know that letting go frees. If uncertainty scares you, know that trust can grow. If overthinking spins you in circles, know that silence can center. If fear rules you, know that courage already lives inside your heart. This path is not about escape. It is about awakening. It is about seeing clearly, loving deeply, and living fully. The Buddha called it the middle way, not indulgence, not denial, but balance. In that balance lies freedom. And so the invitation is simple. Begin now. Not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, but now in this breath. Place your hand on your heart. Feel its beat. Whisper to yourself, I am alive. I am here. This moment is enough. From here, take one step toward awareness, toward compassion, toward freedom. Step by step, breath by breath, the path unfolds. May you walk it with courage. May you discover peace in the midst of change. May you live with compassion for yourself and all beings. And may the shadows of stress, money, relationships, anxiety, loneliness, anger, attachment, uncertainty, overthinking, and fear give way to the light of wisdom, freedom, and love.